the perfect home on the planet. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26 Classmate B is not a human. After 7 o'clock in the evening, the Feiyu building on Hexen Island, shattering its usual quietness, became the busiest place in the small area. After 2 thorough searches, 4 of the 5 security robots departed. 1 remained, standing by the small door leading from the ground floor living room to the backyard. Its feet were shoulder-width apart, its hands folded, lightly covering its abdomen. Its posture was not unlike that of the handsome bodyguards Feiyu had hired during her vacations. This one stared at the people in the hall, its eyes alert yet gentle. Perhaps the dormitory management assumed the security robots were interacting with young graduate students on the East Campus, so they had slightly modified their facial expressions, making their gaze less sharp than the more popular security robots, and instead conveying a subtle, older, gentleness. In the 2 years since Feiyu's living room had been occupied, it had never hosted so many neighbors at once. To her, the neighbors' polite, concerned words of comfort, mingled with their curious inquiries about this sudden incident, were a flurry of conversation, a cacophony of excitement. She hadn't anticipated that her prompt and diligent report to the dormitory office, unsure of the source of the noise, would affect so many people. After the search was complete and the 4 security robots had withdrawn, Xin Yuhong, from Hexi, cautiously drove across the river, peered outside her gate, and called, "Feiyu, Feiyu." Then, 2 boys from the opposite side also crossed, parking their car alongside Xin Yuhong's. "Student Yan, are you alright?" Then, the neighbors to the east, who had never been active, sped across the bamboo forest and arrived. It turned out they had all just been released from confinement. "I'm so sorry. Because of me, you've been restricted for 2 hours. I'm truly sorry." Feiyu stood by the sofa and bowed to the guests. This was good manners. As Dad said, you can't offend every neighbor, life would be difficult. Xin Yuhong immediately stood up from the sofa, and Qi Wei followed suit. Fang Xiaobin, who had been sitting on the armrest next to Qi Wei, was embarrassed because the host had no room for all of them. He had casually and politely moved a little closer to the armrest, but now he also hurriedly stood up. The only single chair in the living room, the one Feiyu occasionally moved to the backyard to enjoy the flowers and cool off under the jacaranda tree, also jumped up in a panic. It was Fan Sheng from the 3rd Department of the Yizhen Division, who was standing across the bamboo forest. Speaking of the Yizhen Division, it was also well known in the Donglan Research Institute. There were 2 departments, A and B. Department A focused on human behavior, while Department B focused on biomimetic research, studying and screening the unique properties of other organisms besides humans, and trying to develop robots for special purposes. It could be considered a neuroscience department. Various robots that did not resemble humans were mostly conceived by people in the Yizhen Division, which earned the students there the nickname Yifiren. This Yifiren classmate, a stranger, arrived last. Feiyu had just welcomed Xin Yuhong, Qi Wei, and Fang Xiaowen, dragging in the chair she had forgotten in the backyard. She was about to take a seat herself and explain the situation, but a car hesitantly drove over the doorway and then circled back. Everyone watched it land. Then watched Fan Cheng get out. Now, in the light and shadow outside, there was a hint of trepidation in her voice. "Hello, I see someone here. Do you know what just happened?" Feiyu immediately invited him in, offering him the only chair, and began the briefing. By this point, no one was sitting down. "Feiyu, it's okay, there's no need to apologize," Xin Yuhong said softly. She was a very good girl and said sincerely, "We just came to see how you were doing." "That's right," Qi Wei and Fang Zhao also said. Although they didn't usually have much communication with Feiyu, and they even jokingly called Yan Shizhen a tyrant behind her back, and he was stopped by Feiyu's loud shouting at him at the river a while ago, he was particularly gentlemanly at this time and answered very appropriately, "Student Yan, don't be so polite. Neighbors should take care of each other. Let's see if there's anything we can help with." "That's right," Fan Cheng replied dryly, looking at everyone. Maybe he was not good at speaking, and he didn't have any other words of comfort, so he went straight to the core issue. "Classmate Yan, right?" Qi Wei said. "Your name is Yan." He glanced at Qi Wei, oblivious to her slightly embarrassed expression. "What kind of noise did you hear?" Have you found its source? Feiyu raised an eyebrow, surprised that this neighbor, who had just shown up to visit for the first time, already knew the reason for the security robot's deployment. She silently glanced at Feng Zhao. He was the only one to ask her about the situation when the security robots were searching the bamboo forest. She had mentioned a noise there. Now, it was Feng Zhao's turn to look a little embarrassed. After inquiring about the situation on the other side, he immediately told Qi Wei, who was video chatting with Fan Cheng, and immediately told him too. It seemed the neighbors were terrified, and when they couldn't leave their homes, they were already nervously sharing information. Feiyu felt apologetic, and she didn't hide it, repeating it sincerely. It wasn't loud, but it was clear. It sounded like something was moving at the edge of the bamboo forest, the kind of sound made by falling bamboo leaves being moving. Fan Cheng leaned forward slightly, staring at Feiyu. Feiyu knew, of course, that the term wasn't accurate. Division B also worked on simulations, biological simulations. For all simulation researchers, the term drive was too general, failing to capture its true meaning. She glanced at Xin Yuhong, who was standing nearby. The neighbors hadn't witnessed the previous water snake incident, and they didn't know it hadn't been found. This time, the security robots had thoroughly searched the bamboo forest and still found nothing unusual. She decided not to voice her suspicions, though she'd preferred to describe it as sliding or twisting. She couldn't have misheard twice, but it was possible that her brain, in her sleep deprivation, was overexcited, unconsciously imagining even slightly unusual sounds as connected to her fears. This is called a heightened mental defense threshold, a normal response to stress. The security robot said the bamboo forest is very clean. In a while, when the dormitory management office performs environmental maintenance, they will turn over the soil and check the bamboo forest again. Tomorrow, a gardening robot will come over to clean up the fallen leaves inside. Feiyu relayed the story in great detail, and was especially apologetic to the neighbor next to the bamboo forest. We will both be asked to try not to stay in the dormitory tomorrow. Oh, Fan Cheng nodded, then shook his head. Nothing, I'm going to class. Yuhong, and Qi is back. Please tell her for me that she was stuck outside. I'm very sorry, it's nothing. She was having dinner with her friends. Xin Yuhong smiled softly. I'll tell her, no mistake, just look at the book bar. Feiyu turned to Qi Wei and Feng Zhao again, opened her mouth slightly, and wondered what the name of the neighbor who didn't go home was. Guang, Feng Zhao said with a considerate smile. He's studying hard in our GUI department teaching building. We'll let him know when he gets back. The most important thing is that you, Yan, are all right. We're all relieved. Thank you, everyone. Feiyu saw her neighbors off to the door and watched as cars took off from her lawn, dispersing into the night like fireworks. Turning back, she saw the last security robot still standing at the door leading to the backyard. She didn't know what emotional intelligence system it had, but it was surprisingly impressive, reading everyone's expressions and observing the situation. Miss Yan Feiyu, are you going to retire? No, I need to eat, Feiyu said flatly. The dormitory management office was very kind to students as long as they didn't request a housekeeping robot. They had left a security robot for Feiyu tonight, supposedly to reassure her. Chapter 27 Happy Cooperation. Tenon, I was allowed to go back, Guang shouted and rushed into the next room. The door was not closed, which made it convenient for him to go in and out to ask questions. He walked through the empty reception room as if he was familiar with the place and went straight to the studio inside. His voice was excited all the way. It's really rare that I was allowed to go back. Shang Tenon raised his head and it took him a moment to get out of his work thoughts. A look of relief appeared on his face. Is the matter with classmate Yan over? Is there anything? I don't know. Qi Wei and Xiao Zhao saw Miss Ding Sangson next door going to inquire about it, so they followed her to see what was going on when there were many people around. But they just went there and have not given me any feedback yet. I guess it's nothing. Guang hadn't encountered such a new thing for so long since he enrolled in school. He was particularly excited, and his tone of voice was much more lively than when he discussed his own annoying project before. The security robot has been here, so there must be nothing wrong, otherwise they wouldn't let us move around freely, right? Alice, I was planning to sleep in the studio tonight if I really couldn't do it, and I even asked you to accompany me if I could. The dormitory management office didn't even give me a chance to work hard, and allowed me to go back so early. Isn't that great? Very good, Yi Xiaoguang chuckled. While he felt relieved, he actually felt a little regretful. As the saying goes, it's better to watch the excitement than to worry about big things. He had this kind of mentality, thinking to himself that he seemed to be sorry for Miss Yan, who had been his neighbor for more than 2 years, so he analyzed, Tannen, I think Yan Shizhen may be too nervous about her experimental area. She wants to ask the dormitory management office to help her check it out at the slightest sign of trouble. This didn't happen before when she didn't have her own land. Student Yan won't do anything without a purpose. Shang Tannen shook his head and thought for a while. It's good that the dormitory management office has checked and there's nothing wrong. The next day, according to the teaching note of the GUI department, all third-year students received a second development task after the start of school. Shang Tannen flipped through the project manual. Stone pot making was still part of the Ancient Culture Experience Hall's early human activity display series. Looking down, he saw that Yamfian, Class 3, was still in charge of the simulation experiment data. It seemed that their upstream and downstream working relationship would continue until the end of this series. Feiyu touched the sample stone she had just received from her mentor, feeling the cold and hardness under her palm. The stones were large and numerous, almost filling her workbench. The edges and corners were very jagged and unpolished. Those were all the jobs she was about to do. Feiyu glanced at the few simple tools and hammers placed on the corner of the workbench, and sighed as she thought about where to go for the construction. The old man had always wanted her to learn some craftsmanship, but she never learned. At most, she would play hide-and-seek in his stone collection, letting the stones touch the corners of her clothes. If the old man knew that she had to find a way to carve a stone pot by hand to earn credit starting today, he would laugh out loud. Student Yan, the video call came in. It was Shang Tannen. Feiyu was unsurprised. Communication between the simulation experimenter and the intelligent system developer was an essential step in the project's initial stages, even if she considered it insignificant. Just like when she first took on the water sunflower project, she didn't waste any time, just nodded and got straight to the point, explaining the progress. Hello, Mr. Shang, the simulation report for the stone pot is expected to be delivered in a month, she added. The water sunflowers will be harvested for the experiment tomorrow, and the report will be submitted at noon the day after tomorrow. If you have any comments on the report within the next 2 weeks, I'll be available to answer your questions 5 times. Shang Tannen was genuinely surprised by her airtight instructions. He glanced at her face, which was as serious and earnest as usual, her eyes clear, giving no sign of the unrest at home the previous night. He was unsure whether to ask about her last night or respond to her long list of progress. Mr. Yan, he said with a smile, I just saw the project book for Shigeru. I wanted to say thank you for your hard work on the Shuka project. We've been having a great time working together, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to work with you again on the Shigeru project. As for the timeline, you don't have to rush it too much, I have some wiggle room, thank you. As Shuki wraps up and Shigeru begins preparations, the two projects overlap, and I can handle it. Feiyu raised an eyebrow. Do you think Shuki is a pleasure to work with? Oh, of course. Feiyu glanced at Shang Tannen's nod, thinking to herself that this developer from Gibu had very low expectations. She had delayed Shuka's report, and he was actually happy and forgiving. She found the collaboration extremely unpleasant. 5 Q&A sessions, you can increase that to 7. Oh, okay, thank you very much. Shang Tannen was stunned, forcing the corners of his mouth to suppress the inexplicable upward curve, wanting to smile but not daring to. Feiyu figured that after Shuka's scene simulation report came out, 7 Q&A sessions within 2 weeks would definitely be enough. Her rule was usually 5 times every 2 weeks. If she was pestered by the intelligent system developers to explain their scenario reports after more than 2 weeks, she would become unbearable. Her efficiency was so low that she couldn't do anything else. 5 times in 2 weeks wasn't enough. Either the developers were low IQ or her report was of low quality. In either case, the collaboration usually ended, and she had no choice but to overturn her report and ask the developers to find someone else. For Shang Tannen, she had initially relaxed the limit to 7 times every 2 weeks. After all, with such a poor collaboration, there were bound to be many small areas of misunderstanding. Student Yan, I heard from Xiaoguang and the others yesterday that there seemed to be some unusual movement near your residence. I wonder what happened next. Are you okay? Shang Tannen asked with concern. Feiyu frowned slightly, thinking back to the bamboo forest that was still intact when she woke up early that morning, with the wind blowing the leaves. She felt uneasy about the fruitless search and felt that this small matter had spread too far. Nothing, she breathed softly, suppressing the image of the bamboo forest in her mind, and emphasized, it won't affect the repeated experiments of Shui Kui. I'm glad you're okay. Shang Tannen hesitated slightly and said sincerely, Student Yan, if you have any doubts, I'm not referring just to the Shui Kui experimental area, but the environment around your residence. The security robot's conclusion is definitely accurate. However, if you're still not reassured and embarrassed to trouble the dormitory management again, I know 1 or 2 students in Department B who can introduce you. Describe the specific situation you encountered to them. Perhaps with their professional knowledge, they can solve the mystery faster than we can. Feiyu glanced at Shang Tannen. Although he didn't say directly whether the water snake had crawled ashore and into the bamboo forest, she understood. She was also highly suspicious. On the other side of the bamboo forest is a Class B3 student named Fan Chang. Feiyu paused, and seeing that Shang Tannen didn't respond, it seemed that he didn't know him, so she continued, Your suggestion is very good, thank you. If there's anything else next time, I will communicate with Fan Chang. After all, we all live near the bamboo forest. That's good. Shang Tannen nodded and smiled. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28 A Hardworking and Friendly Girl. The sky was bright and clear. This was the first morning after the security robots had been stationed overnight, and also the first morning after Feiyu officially began to practice her job as a psychologist, sweeping the house and prescribing medicine. This was also the morning of the water sunflower picking and repeating experiments. Feiyu put on the friendship outfit from the Ancient Culture Experience Hall, a coarse linen skirt, a floral cloth dress, a peach wood hairpin in her hair, and gently walked out the door, carrying a round wooden bucket. The lawn on the downhill slope was emerald green, and the bamboo forest on the east side was illuminated by the morning light. After sweeping away a layer of fallen leaves, the dark soil was exposed, and the small, thin-stemmed weed seemed to be refreshed, happily absorbing the clear light. No. The bamboo forest is not important and should not be included in the scene simulation process. Start over. Feiyu turned back, stepped over the threshold, turned around, and faced the outside of the small building again. She took a breath, adjusted her expression, and the muscles on her cheeks were a little stiff. In fact, if she moved even slightly now, she could feel soreness in her shoulders, back, waist, and legs. After the last security robot withdrew yesterday, she was afraid that sleepless nights would affect her spirit for today's experiments, so she made a determined effort. Before bed, she not only wiped every table and chair in the building, but also knelt on the stairs, scrubbing each step vigorously until they were spotless. Finally, she was able to sleep soundly the moment she touched her pillow. It came at a slight cost. Upon waking today, every muscle in her body felt stiff and strained. But now that she'd moved them around, it wouldn't affect her experimental movements, and she was in excellent spirits. Next time. She carried the bucket and gazed outside the building. The lawn sloped downhill, a vibrant emerald green, like a vast, fresh green blanket, stretching softly from the doorway to the water's edge. The willows swayed gently in the morning breeze, as if beckoning her to come. The water's surface was tranquil and green, dotted with small, round water sunflower leaves, a new lease of life emerging from the desolate, withered leaves of a few days ago. The diligent girl was preparing to pick the freshest leaves. Feiyu lifted her skirt and stepped out the door. No one was around, the neighbors had all gone out. Only the chirping of birds from somewhere accompanied her on her journey. Reaching the shore, she parted the dense clump of water sunflowers and placed her bucket on the surface. It rose and fell with the waves, just enough for her to sit. Everything went smoothly. Feiyu circled among the water sunflowers, slowly paddling the wooden bucket. She leaned down, dipped into the water, plucked leaves, shook them off, and straightened her back. She performed this routine tirelessly 100 times, unnoticed, and before she knew it, she was done. She never slacked off, finally returning to the shore to collect the bucket with a smooth, effortless movement, no unnecessary movements. The experiment ended smoothly. Feiyu let out a soft breath, and as she bent down to pick up the basket of water sunflower leaves, she couldn't help but pound her waist twice with her back hand. She had been so focused on the previous simulation experiment that she hadn't felt any difference even after bending and straightening 100 times. Now, the stiffness and pain in her waist suddenly came to her mind. She supported her waist with her hands, and unexpectedly saw someone on the other side of the river, standing in front of the low hedge of the osmanthus rose garden. "Student Yan, congratulations on completing the simulation experiment," Shang Tanin then approached the shore with a smile on his face. "Is there something to be congratulated for?" Feiyu glanced at him, realizing that he must be anxiously waiting for the report. "I'll send you the report the day after tomorrow," she said, feeling relieved. Before starting the experiment, she was a little nervous, afraid that she would make the same mistake today, and something would come up that would force her to interrupt the experiment. Fortunately, everything went smoothly. If she saw Shang Tanin before picking the fruits, she would definitely scold him. Shang Tanin probably understood this as well. He kept smiling on the other side of the river, and even asked questions carefully and gently. "Student Yan, I want to discuss something with you. Is it convenient for you to come over?" Feiyu's eyes swept across his face, and thinking that she still owed him a favor, she nodded readily. "Please wait a moment." Shang Tanin immediately turned around and drove to the back of Qi Wei and the other two's villa, went around the river bank, and stopped at the peach forest behind Feiyu building. It was unnecessary, they could tell each other across the river. Feiyu wondered what he wanted while picking up the wet wooden barrel and a basket of water sunflower leaves. After a while, Shang Tanin turned out from the west wall of the small building, quickened his pace, and ran towards her. "Student Yan, do you mind if I help you get it?" he asked very politely. Feiyu glanced at him and put the heavy wooden barrel on the ground. "Thank you." On normal days, Feiyu would not allow others to touch her experimental props casually, but today it was not a big deal. Her hands and waist were sore, and the wooden barrel was heavy. Now someone was willing to do it for her, and she was not pretentious. Acting generously is also a social etiquette. The teacher emphasized this again and again in the lady class. Shang Tanin was slightly surprised. Miss Yan was so independent that he had expected her to refuse outright, no matter how tired she was. He happily bent down to take the bucket, then asked, "Can I take the basket, too?" "No need." Shang Tanin stopped pushing and picked up the bucket, heading back to the small building with Feiyu. The sun shone brightly and warmly on the lawn. Shang Tanin tilted his head slightly to glance at Feiyu and slowed his pace. Water dripped from Feiyu's basket, landing on the edge of her skirt and seeping into the grass. The wind blew past, and the few green bamboos at the edge of the bamboo forest bent their branches and swayed gently, a sound that drowned out the rhythmic dripping of water from the baskets in the daylight. Shang Tanin glanced over. "Student Yan, did you discuss the bamboo forest matter with the students from Section B?" Feiyu also looked over. The blue sky, the green bamboo, the green grass, a beautiful sight. "No, he left his contact information and said he could be contacted any time. The same goes for the three of you in Department GUI. You live together, so it's best to help each other with matters concerning the common areas." Shang Tanin smiled. "Just now you said there was something you needed to discuss. It's like this, Mr. Yan." Shang Tanin turned back to the river. "Can I borrow your simulated scene for a while? Once the intelligence system for sunflower picking is complete, I'd like to have the harvesting robot here to try it out. This kind of thing is quite common. Robots always need debugging and testing before they're officially delivered to clients. Department GUI's developers typically build their own simulation test platforms, but being able to directly use the simulated scene is much more convenient. The simulated scene, exterior design, and system development for the sunflower harvesting robot were all completed at the Donglan Research Institute, which is quite advantageous." "How long do you need it for?" Feiyu asked. 3 weeks, is that okay?" Feiyu paused. "Generally, unless there were special circumstances, the people in Department A would agree to such a request. I'll apply to the school for another month's extension." "That should be enough time." "Enough, thank you, classmate Yan," Shang Tanin hurriedly assured. "After using the river, please feel free to tell me how to clean it up. I will make sure you don't have any trouble returning it." "No need, just leave after you're done," Feiyu said indifferently. She glanced at the colorful light that occasionally reflected on the exterior wall of the pink and white building. It was the light of the warning screen triggered when Shang Tanin stepped into the lawn in front of her door. From today on, She clicked on the communicator and added Shuang Tianen's name to the list of people allowed to enter the simulated scene. You can enter the experimental area freely, and the warning signs will no longer pop up. You don't need to notify me every time you come to use it. It's yours. Shuang Tianen stopped at the gate of the small building, feeling very grateful. I'll help you take the bucket in. Okay, Feiyu nodded, agreed again, and led Shuang Tianen to the backyard. Put it here. Shuang Tianen carefully placed the round wooden barrel under the jasmine tree. Xiaoli stood there, not looking around, and looked at Feiyu. Is there anything else I can help you with? No. Shuang Tianen nodded and was about to leave. Feiyu glanced at the basket in her hand. The small round leaves were green and tender with a glisten of water. She raised her eyes and asked, "Do you want to eat water sunflower leaves?" Shuang Tianen was stunned. Miss Yan was going to treat him to dinner again today? This, he considered his words. He broke the appointment last time, so this time he had to be polite. If you like it, this basket of water sunflower leaves is for you. If you need it, I can send you some cooking information for water sunflower leaves. Shuang Tianen really couldn't guess why Miss Yan suddenly gave him water sunflower leaves. Looking into Feiyu's dark eyes, her expression was very calm, not as enthusiastic as others when giving gifts, but somehow, it made people feel that she really wanted to give it to him. Student Yan, keep it for yourself. You worked so hard to pick it. Feiyu stared at Shuang Tianen, nodded slightly after a while, and put the basket into the round wooden barrel. Although Shuang Tianen did not see her look unhappy, he had rejected other people's kindness repeatedly after all. So he couldn't help but explain, I don't cook much myself. Oh, Feiyu expressed her understanding. There are very few people who are willing to cook for themselves now. No wonder she couldn't give away this basket of water sunflower leaves. She would find a chance to repay the favor next time. As they were talking, they had already reached the door. Student Yan, goodbye then, goodbye. Feiyu stretched the corners of her mouth, curving a very shallow arc. Thank you for helping me carry the bucket. I won't see you off. Please stay. Shuang Tianen smiled and walked to the west wall of the small building. He turned his head to look at the small building. There was no one in front of the door. He was puzzled and grateful. This student Yan had actually become more peaceful and friendly after they met. Chapter 29, Kegu. Shuang Tianen landed the car at the edge of the peach orchard. Turning his head, he saw the sloped bank covered in wildflowers, red, pink, yellow, and blue. Wow, the fruits on these trees are getting bigger and bigger. Do the dorm management just let them grow like this? He smiled, his eyes skimming over the fruit-laden peach grove. Qianjin, it's still early. Let's wait a while, okay? Qianjin stood by the car door, taking a deep breath, seemingly intoxicated by the sweet morning air filled with the fragrance of fruit. He half raised his head and looked toward the pink and white building beside the peach orchard. Student Yan doesn't seem to be up yet. The building was quiet. The two windows upstairs were closed, and the retractable roof of the backyard downstairs also covered the courtyard wall. Shuang Tianen remembered that there should be a flowering tree in the courtyard. As he was thinking, the retractable roof slowly retracted, recessing into the building wall, revealing the crown of the flowering tree from the high wall. Only a few pink and white flowers remained among the silver-purple leaves. It seemed that its peak bloom there was even earlier than the wildflowers on the slope. The morning light shone in. The pink and white flowers and the pink and white walls complemented each other beautifully. Student Yan should be up. Qianjin also noticed the change in the retractable roof for the first time and pointed his finger over. Qianjin, let's stop by the river first and go over later. Shuang Tianen called out and shouted to the car, Kegu, come down. Feiyu got up and went downstairs. She opened the door and saw that the river was quiet, so she went to the kitchen for breakfast. A colorful light suddenly shone above the willows, and the warning screen lit up. She walked out the door and turned around to see two boys walking towards her from the bank of the peach blossom forest. When they met her gaze, they both smiled. It was Shuang Tianen and Qianjin, who was responsible for the robot's appearance design. Feiyu's expression did not change much. Her gaze passed through the gap between their shoulders and fell on the slim girl behind them. Student Yan, good morning. Shuang Tianen walked to the door of the small building. Good morning, classmate Yan. Qianjin beamed, scratching his head in embarrassment. We're sorry to bother you so early. Yes, Feiyu said softly. Good morning, both of you. This is Kegu, Shuang Tianen said with a smile. Feiyu nodded, taking a look. She was wearing the uniform women's clothing custom made by the Research Institute for Testing Robots, and with a youthful face designed for the Ancient Culture Experience Center, she looked like an innocent and happy schoolgirl. Keigu, this is Miss Yan Fixu, your behavior and appearance, Yu Qianjun introduced excitedly. Shuang Tanin smiled and fell silent, seeing her partner from Department C anxiously asking Miss Yan, how is it, classmate Yan? Do you think it's okay? Wow, the robot muttered, eyes wide open, glancing up at Fixu, and bowing respectfully. Grandfather, it's nice to meet you. Please give me your guidance. Fixu glanced at Shuang Tanin expressionlessly. Keigu's system is still being debugged, and it's not yet independent of the simulation data, Shuang Tanin hurriedly explained. Oh, during the association period, its learning entity is defaulted to this name. Shuang Tanin smiled apologetically. That's how it's defined in the GUI department tradition. Feiyu didn't comment. In the past, when she finished a project simulation, the downstream system development researchers would show her the final results. Those were all finalized robots, but there were still half-finished robots in the debugging association period running up to her. This ancestor was quite new. Keigu pursed her rosy lips, her dark pupils full of curiosity. It was observing Feiyu. Feiyu was also observing it. It was the same height and weight as her, wearing a knee-length skirt. Coincidentally, Feiyu was also wearing a skirt today. One human, one robot, even the color was the same light gray. Looking at each other like this, they looked like a pair of mirror images. Fortunately, their facial features were different, but there seemed to be a slight similarity in their expressions. Overall, Keigu's face was much friendlier than Feiyu's. It was barely acceptable, Feiyu thought to herself, still feeling the picking robot could be a bit more robust. It stretched its neck, pursed its cheeks, and stood with a solemn expression, imitating Feiyu's, its demeanor becoming more refined. Shuang Tanin frowned, and Feiyu also frowned. Not very good, she said bluntly. There is no need to learn what you shouldn't learn. Yes, it still needs to be modified. Shuang Tanin nodded. Maybe it felt familiar with the original body and it stimulated its interest in learning. Keigu was at a loss for a moment, staring at Feiyu. Grandma, what shouldn't it learn? Feiyu didn't respond to the robot at all, and just asked Shuang Tanin. Buckets and baskets, right? Yes, wait a minute, I'll go in and get them. Shuang Tanin video called her yesterday and said that he was going to test a picking robot today and asked her to borrow the full set of tools used in the sunflower picking simulation experiment. Feiyu naturally agreed. After looking at Keigu, she had no extra interest and turned to the backyard to get the wooden bucket and basket. Yu Qianjun and Shuang Tanin were still waiting on the lawn outside the door, but his eyes followed her inside. A moment later, seeing her emerge, he unconsciously took 2 steps forward and stepped through the gate. Student Yan, I'll get it. Shuang Tanin opened her mouth to say something, but when Yu Qianjun reached out and placed his hand on the edge of the wooden barrel, she swallowed it, glancing at Feiyu's face and continuing to stand outside the threshold. I'm going to be out in a bit. When you're done, just leave it outside my door. Feiyu glanced at Yu Qianjun calmly, then cast her gaze at Shuang Tanin, who was a few steps away. Without emphasizing a single word, she said calmly, or you can take it back and return it to me after all the tests are complete. With that, she turned away, ignoring the 2 people and the machine, and prepared to go into the kitchen. Thank you, Student Yan, Yu Qianjun said loudly behind her. Shuang Tanin steeled himself. Student Yan, I have one more thing to trouble you with. What is it? Feiyu paused, turned around, and frowned. The warning screen, Shuang Tanin said quickly. Can you add Qianjun to the on-site personnel list? He'll be with me today, at least half a day. Thank you so much, Student Yan. Yu Qianjun stayed where he was. Seeing Feiyu seem to be operating, he took the initiative and said, Student Yan, have you found Yu Qianjun from Bingson? He's the first student in Bingson. I told Tanin that it would be best if I could take a look when he tests the Keigu function. The overall appearance has been finalized, and I want to see if there are any details that affect its movement. Okay, Feiyu interrupted. Outside the gate, the floating warning screen that had been spinning and shining above the river suddenly went out. Thank you, Student Yan, Yu Qianjun said hurriedly. You're welcome, Feiyu said casually, staring at Shuang Tanin. Anything else you need? Let me know. No, Shuang Tanin shook his head apologetically. Feiyu went straight into the kitchen. Qianjun, let's get started. Yu Qianjun came to his senses. Okay, He turned around and took 2 steps. The wooden barrel in his hand was taken by Shuang Tannen without him noticing. After he let go, he suddenly realized, "Hey, Tannen, let me carry it, it's okay, it's for Kegu." Shuang Tannen reminded, "Qianjin, you can give the basket to Kegu too." Qianjin chuckled twice, watched Kegu take the tools, and said regretfully, "If Kegu wore the retro outfit that classmate Yan wore that day, it would be more immersive. That suit has to be returned to the customer. I'm just testing the performance of the robot today, so there's no need to be so sullen," Shuang Tannen said with a smile. Chapter 30 The Elephant is Invisible. When Feiyu finished breakfast and went out, she saw Shuang Tannen and Qianjin standing by the river surrounded by a robot, seemingly talking. She glanced at them briefly and drove away. "Grandpa is gone," Kegu turned her head and said. Her bionic eyes were clearly black and white, tracking the orange car passing over the peach blossom forest. Qianjin had forgotten what he had just said. He looked up and saw the sleek car like a strange bird flying across the blue sky. He did not retract his gaze until it was blocked by the treetops in the distance. Shuang Tannen looked at Kegu's face, and there was a feeling of reluctance and even a little admiration on her fair skin. He frowned. "Qianjin, do you think this Kegu's social skills are a little too active? You think she's too talkative? Compared to Yan, she's more than a little behind." Qianjin quickly realized the inappropriateness of his statement. Even if Feiyu was the original Kegu's picking behavior data, and even a reference for his initial design, according to the robot construction convention, other aspects of the robot, such as personality expression, interpersonal communication, and thinking patterns, that are not project requirements, are strictly prohibited from being compared to or compared with the original. After the project is completed and the robot's appearance and intelligence system are successfully finalized, the connection with the simulation experiment data will be severed, and the robot and the original will have no connection at all. The elephant is invisible. This is a basic requirement of the robot construction convention. Tannen, doesn't the Ancient Culture Experience Center still need Kegu to interact with visitors? It's fine as it is. Qianjin scratched his head and teased, "Perhaps you've injected a broader and more comprehensive personality into its daily social activities, so it has to express its opinions on everything it sees, maybe. I'll check it out later." Shuang Tannen shook his head and smiled. Kegu was still looking at the sky. Feiyu's car had already gone far away, leaving not a trace of light or shadow, only a piece of sky. It looked at it obsessively, and starting from that direction, it raised its head and continued to look up at the entire sky. Qianjin saw Shuang Tannen looking for its flaws, so he took a breath and examined it carefully. He stared at the slender white jaw exposed after Kegu stretched her neck, and his heart moved. "Tannen, can you lend me classmate Yan's simulation report to take a look?" Shuang Tannen glanced at him sideways. "I always feel that something is not quite right," Qianjin explained, without looking at Shuang Tannen, but only staring intently at the robot's chin, where the fascial layer of humanoid muscle was thin and soft, wrapping around the delicate throat. It was simply flawless. "I want to see the simulation report and compare it with my feelings," he murmured. "Okay, no problem," Shuang Tannen said readily, offering his opinions sincerely. "I feel like you've incorporated some similarities into Kegu. Perhaps you looked at Mr. Yan's simulacrum when you first designed it, and that's preconceived notion. Re-examining it might help, and you can eliminate those unnecessary similarities." That's exactly how I feel." Qianjin scratched his head again, embarrassed. "Boss Jin recently asked me to model a Yulu rabbit. I've been looking at pictures of that rabbit every day, and my design technique has become primarily based on imitation." Shuang Tannen laughed. "That's really possible. You better be moderate. Boss Jin hasn't told you about a Yulu rabbit yet?" Qianjin asked curiously. "He told me the order is urgent and he's pushing me hard. I don't have time to go today, but he still wants me to go." "He hasn't told you yet. Could it be that he's outsourced the Yulu rabbit system?" Boss Jin is the boss of the instrumentation room. The instrumentation room is a long way outside the research institute, a workshop specializing in custom robotic pets. Qianjin and Shuang Tannen both worked part-time there, Qianjin doing styling design, Shuang Tannen developing systems for pet body movements. They worked in different departments at the research institute, but they met while taking orders in the equipment room. They'd been friends for over 2 years, starting in their first year. "That rabbit is for little kids to play with. It squats on the ground, barely moving, and just purrs. It doesn't need a complicated system." Shuang Tannen shook his head and laughed. Boss Jin said we'd transplant a nursery rhyme version onto it first, and then give it to the customer. If they're not satisfied, come back to me, swindler, trying to save money on everything, no more chatting. Kegu, get to work, Xiong Tannen called out. Kegu straightened her neck and stared fiercely into Xiong Tannen's eyes. Yes, she vaguely resembled Miss Yan. Xiong Tannen thought to himself that this robot was a bit over the top, and Yu Qianzhen needed to rework it. Kegu, go ahead, Yu Qianzhen ordered with a grin. When Feiyu returned home at dusk, she was surprised to find Xiong Tannen still there, sitting against the trunk of a willow tree, head half lowered, seemingly working. Beside her, the robot codenamed Kegu was also sitting with her knees hugged. A wooden barrel with a basket in it was neatly placed at her door. Grandpa is back, Xiong Tannen raised his head and first stared at Kegu's expression. After removing its entire social function, the robot under modification did not show any expression fluctuations, but was only noticing the changes in the environment. He then turned his head to look at the small building and stood up. Kegu followed him closely. Feiyu got off the car and stopped, passing Xiong Tannen, glancing at the robot twice, noticing that the hem of its skirt was slightly lifted and its clothes were dry. It was obvious that Xiong Tannen's system was generally acceptable, and the robot did not fall into the water once during the picking test. Student Yan, you're back, Feiyu nodded. Out of politeness, she asked, how are your test results? Not bad. There are some minor areas that need improvement. I'll test them again in a few days. Hello, Grandma, Kegu said, bowing her head briefly before looking up again. Feiyu's gaze flicked to its face, raising an eyebrow. It looks a little different than this morning. Have you started making changes? Yes, Xiong Tannen instructed, tilting his head. Kegu, wait for me by my car. Goodbye, Grandma. Kegu bowed again, saying the polite words, then turned and walked away. During the contact period, you can't let it imitate you too much, Xiong Tannen said with a smile. Feiyu didn't care about Kegu at all. That was Xiong Tannen's responsibility. She had already done her part. The 2-week Q&A period for the scenario report is almost over. Ask any questions as soon as possible, she reminded. No waiting after the deadline. I need to concentrate on making the stone pot. Okay, classmate Yan. Feiyu's work went smoothly today and she brought back a lot of stones. At this moment, she was unusually considerate and pointed to the door and said, you can take the wooden barrels and baskets back. You don't have to borrow and return them every time, which wastes everyone's efficiency. Okay, thank you, classmate Yan. Xiong Tannen paused and asked in a gentle voice, the robot picked a lot of water sunflower leaves today. Do you need them? Feiyu glanced at the neatly stacked small green round leaves in the bamboo basket. The robot was neater than her in stacking them. No, you can eat them yourself. Whoever picks them, gets to finish them. Chapter 31 Backyard. Student Yan, I really can't use them, but water sunflower leaves are very rare. If you like them, I'll leave them for you. Leave them to someone else. I'm tired of eating them, Feiyu said flatly. This was the truth. When Feiyu was doing experiments, she was very bad at splashing water at first, but later she became more and more skilled and could always pick a lot of water sunflower leaves. She grew them herself, picked them herself, and cooked them herself. The feeling was different. The fresh and tender water sunflower leaves were a supreme delicacy after the hard work of the experiment. However, after eating them so many times in a row, even if she tried to change the way she cooked them, the rare ingredients were no longer so rare. She now felt that water sunflower leaves were just so-so and was not very interested in them. Xiong Tannen had originally considered Miss Yan's cooking abilities, so after Kegu's testing was complete, he'd stayed behind, waiting for Feiyu to return. He'd asked if she wanted some water sunflower leaves. After all, he'd troubled her by borrowing the set and tools. Feiyu's bluntness had embarrassed him, so he smiled and said, since Miss Yan doesn't need them, I'll take them back. Feiyu nodded casually, bending down to pull a large box from the car. Miss Yan, do you need any help? Xiong Tannen asked, noticing how much Feiyu was struggling. Feiyu glanced at Xiong Tannen and confessed, it's very heavy, don't worry, I'll help you get it in. Feiyu stepped aside, making room for him. Xiong Tannen came forward, took over and picked it up, only to feel his arm sink. He looked at Feiyu and said, it's so heavy, how can you lift it? I'll carry it separately, Feiyu said honestly, looking at Xiong Tannen. who was holding the whole box of stones against his chest, as if he was struggling. He smiled gently and could not speak much. She didn't know why he picked up the whole box at once. She originally wanted to wait for him to come over, open the box and let him pick a suitable stone to move based on his strength. Feiyu wondered if the man was strong enough, so she turned around and walked to the front to lead the way. She still walked through the hall and led Shuang Tanan to the backyard. The backyard surprised Shuang Tanan. He helped Feiyu carry the wooden barrel last time and had the opportunity to enter this place. He remembered it as a very elegant place with a flower tree and a chair. Now he saw that the wheels on the ground were full of stones of different sizes. Feiyu picked her steps between the stones, reminding them, "Be careful, put it gently." Here, she pointed to a small open space at the courtyard wall. "Thank you." Shuang Tanan followed her step by step, bent down to put the box down, then exerted some strength, gritted his teeth slightly, moved the box, and leaned it against the wall. When he stood up, he tried to hold his breath. The box was really heavy. His eyes swept over the stones on the ground. They were all irregular in shape, some big and some small. The big ones were almost enough to be encircled with two hands, and the small ones were as big as a person's head. Several of them had some indentations on their surfaces. There was a cushion under the cherry tree, and 4 or 5 hand-carved knives and hammers were neatly placed on it. A thin layer of white stone powder was scattered on the ground in front of the cushion, similar in color to the powder on the carving knives. "Student Yan, are you making stone pots here?" "Stone pots are not made, they are chiseled out." Feiyu was a little depressed. "Yes, I'm practicing here." Dean did find a stone mountain and contacted the hospital to coordinate and set up a simulated scene experimental site. It was not a problem. The problem was that Feiyu could only chisel shallow marks on the stone surface. At this rate, she would have to work in the stone mountain every day and would not be able to return home. "I will move some more stones." She waved her hand to the side, "and pile them up high and full here. When we create the simulated scene, we can take a close-up view and it will feel like a quarry." Miss Yan even used her own dormitory building for the project. Shuang Tanan admired her professionalism. "Do we need to move a lot more stones?" He gauged the difference between the scattered stones on the ground and the quarry she'd described, sensing a significant amount of work ahead. "Are you moving them bit by bit like this? Next time you need help, let me know and I'll help you. We're all working on the stone pot project together, so please don't hesitate." "Thank you." For large quantities, robots will be deployed, so no manpower is needed. Feiyu paused, her frustration rising. "Right now, I'm selecting the stones." She opened the box, revealing 4 pale green stones. "Want some?" Shuang Tanan said hurriedly. "I'll get them." Feiyu simply stepped aside, not wanting to burden 2 people with the same task. Shuang Tanan followed Feiyu's instructions, unloading the stones from the box and placing them on the ground. He placed his palm on the stones, comparing them to those under the tree, and couldn't help but pique his interest. "Are these the raw materials for the stone pots? The colors and textures seem different. How do you choose? Do you specialize in stone?" Feiyu raised an eyebrow. "No, it's just that they look different." Shuang Tanan shook his head. "I don't know anything about stones. The grayish-white one is Shukin stone from the southwest mountains of Dian, which is relatively hard. The light green one is granite, which is said to be softer." Shuang Tanan thought quickly. "Student Yan, did you choose based on hardness?" Of course not. If she didn't, how could she hope to carve a stone pot? Feiyu nodded. "Yes, can I touch them all?" "Yes, they all seem about the same solid." Feiyu paused, then silently hummed again. "These stones are so frustrating." Feiyu hadn't expected carving a stone pot to be so difficult. The technique was secondary. The most painful thing was that she lacked stamina. Progress was truly slow. This simulation experiment should be handled by a burly male student. Shuang Tanan treated the situation as a project discussion. Since he had permission, he squatted on the ground and meticulously touched each stone. He then carefully examined the tools placed under the tree. He scraped the incisions inside the small, chiseled stone with his fingers and rubbed the trace of powder on his fingertips. Looking up, he stumbled upon Feiyu, staring at the stone with a troubled frown. He blurted out, "Did the simulation experiment go well?" "Fairly." Feiyu felt the question was heartbreaking and assured Shuang Tanan, "I'll submit the report on time." Shuang Tanan was secretly surprised. Miss Yan gave the impression that nothing was difficult for her. She didn't say it was good outright, which meant that this stone pot project might be troubling her. He shouldn't ask too much about the details of the process. This was the conclusion Xiang Tannen had drawn from the water sunflower experiment. Mr. Yan, if there's anything you need for the project, just let me know, Xiang Tannen said again, earnestly. Feiyu thought about the hour of stone chisel in practice she set for herself every night. Even before she started, she felt her arms tingle. This was the most arduous simulation experiment she'd ever taken on. It wasn't exactly mentally taxing, but it was incredibly physically demanding. Working on it, she no longer had to scrub the floor over and over again to fall asleep. She could just fall asleep as soon as she fell into bed exhausted. Her insomnia seemed to have vanished. Chapter 32 Expert Opinion. Xiang Tannen, carrying a round wooden bucket and a basket filled with water lily leaves, stood in front of Feiyu's small building and said goodbye to her. The sunset glowed warmly into the bamboo forest again. Xiang Tannen glanced sideways, and it was clear and refreshing inside. Student Yan, have you been okay recently? Feiyu was puzzled at first, but following his gaze, she understood what he was asking. It was quite good to say that during this period, the forest and the water were peaceful, and the strange sound had not been heard again. If it weren't for the fact that a black water snake had indeed slithered through the river, she probably wouldn't have worried about it occasionally. No. Goodbye, I won't see you off. Xiang Tannen nodded with a smile and walked around to the peach blossom forest. During this period, it was the deadline for the first system development task of the third grade of GUI. Qi Wei and the other three had not returned yet, and most of his classmates were working hard in the teaching building or some testing field. Xiang Tannen thought about his classmates one by one, but he didn't remember any of them having cooked. He sighed, looking at the fresh water lily leaves, and said it was a pity. After working on this project, he'd learned a lot about water chestnuts. It was indeed a very rare ingredient, hard to find even in high-end restaurants. Qianjin, where are you now? Are you back? He video chatted Yu Qianjin. Just got to the dorm. Yu Qianjin wiped his face, sat down, and immediately started complaining. Boss Jin is really too demanding. I've already made several revisions for him, but he's still not satisfied and wants me to make more. He quickly picked up an Angora rabbit, held it to his face, and squeezed it hard. The rabbit suddenly made a series of gurgling sounds, and it was unclear what it was singing. Isn't it cute? I think it's already so cute. Xiang Tannen couldn't help laughing. Boss Jin, what else do you want to improve? Everything. For color, body shape, head, ears, eyeballs. Yu Qianjin listed them impatiently. Anyway, everyone has opinions. Let's not talk about it anymore. Hey, Tannen, how were the results of your afternoon test? At the end, did you wait for classmate Yan to come back and ask her to give you some advice? The afternoon test was generally okay, and some minor details need to be improved. Classmate Yan can still answer questions. Xiang Tannen smiled. We picked some water sunflower leaves today and got a basket of water sunflower leaves. Do you need them? What do I need the leaves for? Did classmate Yan say anything to Kegu later? I'm afraid she will be like Boss Jin, raising her eyebrows and looking down on Kegu, and never being satisfied. I heard that the people in their Department A have high standards and strict requirements. That's not the case. When Yan came back, Kegu had already stopped the test and she didn't say anything more. Qianjin, just do as we agreed this morning and make a few minor changes. You don't have to worry too much about the rest. Xiang Tannen smiled and advised again. Water sunflower is a rare natural ingredient. Don't you really want to try it? How should I try it? Eat it raw? I've never cooked before. Yu Qianjin waved his hand and suggested enthusiastically, Tannen, why don't you ask Yan? Everyone in their Department A is versatile. Maybe Yan can cook? I asked, and Yan doesn't need it. Neither do I. That's really, Xiang Tannen said regretfully, since none of you want to, it seems I'll have to try it myself. Qianjin, you've worked hard today too. How about I ask you to come over and have a taste when I'm done? You can cook too, Yu Qianjin said in surprise. I can't, but it would be a shame to waste it. Yan has some cooking methods. Maybe I can ask her for the simplest one to try, Xiang Tannen joked. Classmate Yan provided a recipe. Yu Qianjin was surprised, and then said, Tannen, now that you mentioned it, I'm interested too. Give me some leaves and I'll try it. If you want it, take them all. I'll send it to you. I just have to go back to the dormitory. Okay, Yu Qianjin accepted the water sunflower with great interest. Xiang Tannen was also very happy, but saw Yu Qianchen looking at him hesitantly and half-teasingly. Tannen, if I ask classmate Yan for cooking methods, will she tell me? The people in Department A really collect all kinds of weird information, huh? Shang Tannen was stunned for a moment, and quickly smiled and said, it's not that weird. I think there are water sunflower recipes on Star Online. Why don't I help search for it for you now? I'd better ask classmate Yan first. We don't know anything about recipes, and we won't know which one is the best to cook even if we find it. Shang Tannen groaned inwardly, but didn't know how to pour cold water on Yu Qianchen. Miss Yan didn't have much contact with Yu Qianchen. Yu Qianchen had suddenly approached her, asking for a recipe. He wasn't sure Miss Yan would offer any recommendations. Feiyu certainly wasn't willing. She remembered Yu Qianchen. This man, the one who interrupted her simulation experiment with his shouting, the one who trampled wildly in the river, damaging many of her water sunflowers, the one who nearly got her attacked by a water snake during the tug-of-war, and the one who caused her long-standing insomnia. Her clothes were soaked, but Yu Qianchen didn't know how to be discreet. Although he meant well, his behavior betrayed a rough and reckless temperament. During meetings, this man was long-winded and always said things twice. This morning, he had come in uninvited and casually walked into the hall of the small building. Feiyu had only met Yu Qianchen 3 times in total, but she still had some impression of him. It wasn't a very good impression. Just as dusk fell, Feiyu received a video call from Yu Qianchen. Although she was a little confused, her expression remained calm. She waited for Yu Qianchen to get down to business. Hello, classmate Yan. Tannen gave me a basket of water sunflower leaves. I heard that you have a cooking method for water sunflower leaves. Can I borrow them? Yu Qianchen smiled. He has a handsome appearance and a friendly smile, which does not make people feel very disgusted. Feiyu just thinks he is inexplicable. She is not an encyclopedia and she is not familiar with him. He came to her rashly based on hearsay, so she labeled him as self-familiar. I'll send you a copy. After being stunned for a while, Feiyu responded indifferently. These small pieces of information are nothing. Feiyu is not an enthusiastic person, but when classmates come to her for help, she will usually agree to anything that can be agreed. No mistakes, one song, one post, one content, one book, one forum, 1619, take a look. Thank you. I've never cooked before. And I'm at a loss for what to do with this basket of water sunflower leaves. Yan, thank you so much. Feiyu waited quietly for Yu Qianchen to finish, observing this social etiquette. Then she said, you're welcome. Goodbye. She nodded at Yu Qianchen and simply hung up the video call. Less than half an hour later, Yu Qianchen called again. Feiyu was sitting cross-legged under a tree in the backyard, holding the newly moved granite stone, swinging her arms and chiseling vigorously. She picked up the phone, her tone not at all gentle. What's up? Oh, Yan, I've seen the information you sent, Yu Qianchen said a little uncomfortably. This is my first time cooking, and I don't have any seasonings in the kitchen. His face flushed slightly, and he looked embarrassed. Feiyu listened calmly, thinking to herself that he dared to cook when he had nothing. If he asked to borrow seasonings, she would definitely not lend them to him, as she didn't have that many small bottles. Fortunately, Yu Qianchen didn't make such a request. Instead, he asked, Student Yan, can you give me some advice? Is there a simpler method? Blanch it in hot water for 3 minutes and drink it as a clear soup, Feiyu said calmly. In reality, she was more inclined to suggest that Yu Qianchen abandon the basket of water sunflower leaves. Such a precious ingredient had been treated so unfairly, lacking even the most basic seasoning. It was better to be ignored. Okay, I'll try. Yu Qianchen's eyes lit up, and he said excitedly. From his reaction, Feiyu was certain he had no idea about cooking and was completely incapable of instruction. Another 10 minutes later, Feiyu finally managed to carve a shallow indentation into the granite block. She was about to chisel deeper along the indentation when the video call chime rang. Impatient, Feiyu answered the call with a scowl. Student Yan, I followed your instructions, and the soup is delicious, Yu Qianchen reported excitedly. Chapter 33, Hot Water Scalding Water Sunflower. Would you like to try it? I'll bring you a bowl, Yu Qianchen asked enthusiastically. Feiyu was stunned and immediately declined. No, thank you, no trouble, I can drive over quickly, I don't want to drink it, Feiyu said, a little forcefully. Yu Qianchen seemed disappointed, but he quickly offered another suggestion. Mr. Yan, I heard water sunflowers are very rare. I don't dare to cook them all, for fear they'll be ruined. So I've left half the leaves. Why don't I bring them over so you can try them? His face was filled with genuine enthusiasm. Feiyu's gaze pierced the projection screen, lingering on her face for a second before she said with restraint, "No, you can eat it yourself. It's really good, Mr. Yan, try it. It cooks quickly," Yu Qianjun urged earnestly. "The soup is delicious." This was the first time Feiyu had been so easily stymied by someone's words. She wasn't usually talkative, but she was always polite and courteous. In the eyes of others, she was a quiet lady. But when she was pricked, she became impatient and could not speak tactfully, which only made her upset others. Yu Qianjun's suggestion made her feel confused and like she was shooting herself in the foot. "I'm busy, bye." She cut off the video call without any more nonsense. Feiyu was very angry. Yu Qianjun had interrupted her stone chiseling practice again and again today. This kind of hard work is okay to do in one go, but the most taboo is to stop and start, because the fatigue will be very obvious and you will not want to continue. She rubbed her sore arms, picked up a brush and gently brushed away the stone powder around the dent, then continued to chisel with gritted teeth. Yu Qianjun, on the other hand, stared at the empty projection screen, put away his lost look, turned to look at the half basket of water sunflower leaves, scratched his head, and helplessly video called, "Tannen, I have made water sunflower leaves. Do you want to come and try them?" "Not bad, Qianjun, you can cook now," Shang Tannen praised. "How could I? That's embarrassing. I asked Yam for a simple recipe. It smells like green grass. You should try it too. I have half a basket left. I'll dive in when you come over." Even though Shang Tannen had never cooked before, he knew that making a dish wasn't as simple as diving into the water. Curious, he asked, "Did Yan teach you how to make it? How did you do it?" "You'll see when you come over. It's quick. It won't take much of your time. Oh, by the way, you look busy making system modifications, right? I haven't received Yan's simulation report yet. Don't forget to give me a copy. After dinner, I'm also getting ready to start the night shift. I need to modify both the picking girl and the Gulu rabbit." "Okay," Shang Tannen chuckled and handed him the simulation report. He carefully reviewed it, repeatedly comparing it with the robot's picking behavior today. In the concept of robot intelligence development, the simulation researchers' actions are equivalent to building a behavioral model framework that the robot can imitate, eliminating the inevitable occasional flaws in human behavior and striving for precise optimization. Shang Tannen could hardly find any flaws in Feiyu's simulated video. The monitoring data showed that each of her repeated movements was quite precise. He knew that this was the result of Feiyu's continuous splashing of water. He had personally witnessed her practice many times, so he could fully appreciate the difficulty involved. This high-quality simulated report made him sincerely admire Feiyu's attitude towards work. The woman in the video was dressed in ancient costume, and her movements were light and graceful. Kegu looked at her, imitated her, and learned from her. In terms of the stability of her movements, Kegu was slightly better than her now, but Shang Tannen always felt that Kegu was a little stiff, not as graceful and natural as the real person. It still needed to be improved. Shang Tannen breathed a sigh of relief, put his work aside for the time being, and prepared to continue after tasting Yu Qianjun's cooking skills. The two people's dormitory buildings were not far away, only 3 or 4 buildings away. "Tannen, come in," Yu Qianjun led him directly into the kitchen. They both lived in single dormitories in the East Su district, and the layout of Yu Qianjun's dormitory was exactly the same as Shang Tannen's. As Shang Tannen entered the kitchen, he knew that Yu Qianjun, like him, had never used kitchen utensils before. Yu Qianjun's kitchen was neat and deserted, and except for a pot and a familiar basket on the worktop, it was no different from his own. The pot was brand new, and it was obvious that it had just been used. "The water is ready, just waiting for you." Yu Qianjun smiled and grabbed a handful of water sunflower leaves from the basket, opened the pot, and sprinkled them in. "Good technique," Shang Tannen joked. "That's right. I just did it for myself," Yu Qianjun said jokingly. "Tannen, do you think it's okay for me to simulate a cooking robot for you? We can give it a try. It just so happens that a sunflower picking robot does need to use cooking functions." Shang Tannen agreed jokingly, and then asked, "I sent the report you asked for. Did you receive it?" "Yes, I did." At first glance, Mr. Yan's simulation was really beautiful, so I was thinking it would be even better if we could simulate a real person cooking. Yu Qianzhen, holding the pot, shook his head and said jokingly, "It's okay, Tannen, just watch me. I've learned the true skills from Mr. Yan." Shang Tannen quickly realized how simple Yu Qianzhen's method was. "Is that all?" Shang Tannen looked suspiciously at the piles of sunflower leaves floating in the steaming water. The originally round edges had curled up from the heat, and the fresh green had turned brown. Yu Qianzhen's method had nothing to do with cooking. If you had to force it, it was a bit like rinsing vegetables in hot water. The only slightly commendable aspect was the faint, refreshing aroma emanating from the wafting water vapor. Yu Qianzhen called it a herbal fragrance, and rightly so. It was indeed somewhat similar to the natural aroma of grass and trees after a gardening robot mows the lawn. "Hurry up and drink it," Yu Qianzhen urged, awaiting Shang Tannen's evaluation. Shang Tannen, always composed, still pressed a question. "Qianzhen, is this how classmate Yan taught you to make it?" "You don't need to add anything." "I didn't add anything. Classmate Yan gave me a recipe that required at least 4 or 5 seasonings, and I didn't have time to buy them right away. Then she told me this method, drink it as a clear soup, and it's quite good." Shang Tannen, half convinced, took the bowl and drank. The soup was a pale yellow, and once it cooled, even the herbal aroma disappeared. It was extremely bland, but tolerable. At least it quenched my thirst. The watercress leaves were slightly slippery in his mouth, not astringent, but simply lacking in flavor. After 17 or 18 leaves, the experience was less than pleasurable. "How did it taste?" Yu Qianzhen asked with great interest, his expectations high for his first dish. Not wanting to put Yu Qianzhen down too hard, Shang Tannen tactfully replied, "Not bad, just a little bland. I think it's okay too," Yu Qianzhen said excitedly, glancing at the kitchen. "Tannen, I haven't really looked into the kitchen since I moved in. I didn't expect I'd make a dish today. However, I spent much more time figuring out how to use the kitchen utensils than cooking." Shang Tannen knew blanching the leaves was definitely not a conventional cooking method, but considering Yu Qianzhen had no seasonings, Miss Yan's suggestion was reasonable. On reflection, such a method was truly something Miss Yan would bring up. She was very direct. "The people in Department A really know everything. They taught me, a complete culinary novice, in just a few words." It sounded like Yu Qianzhen and Miss Yan were communicating very well. Shang Tannen couldn't help but marvel at it. Miss Yan seemed aloof, but she was actually very friendly to her classmates, helping others without hesitation. However, her advice was a bit amusing. Chapter 34, The matter is over and I leave. Feiyu had been having a bit of a rough time these days. So far, she hadn't managed to carve out a single stone pot, though she Ao had managed to carve out 2 or 3. She had worked on some techniques, but unfortunately, she didn't have the strength. No matter how good her techniques were, she couldn't carve out a perfect stone pot quickly. After all, it was a physical job, suitable for hardy men who worked hard, but not for a delicate girl like her. That day, dark clouds covered the sky, and it was already dark by mid-afternoon. Feiyu had collected another type of stone from the Ancient Culture Experience Hall. There were several types of stones suitable for making stone pots, and the 2 new ones were said to be the softest. Feiyu knew from the feel of the stones that she shouldn't have too high expectations. No matter how soft a stone was, it was still stone, and she still had to work hard on it. Having said that, she still had to move the stones back to try. Feiyu took a look at the sky and had no intention of staying in the studio any longer, so she carried the stones in batches to the car and rushed back to the dormitory. Another car was vaguely parked at the edge of the peach blossom forest behind the building. Feiyu looked towards the river from midair. A person in green stood under the willows. A round wooden barrel was floating in the middle of the water sunflowers, with a quiet girl sitting in it. Shang Tannen was conducting the final system test of the water sunflower picking robot. Feiyu's orange car passed over the roof of the villa for 2 people, owned by Karen Mok and Xin Yuhong, crossed the river, and landed on the lawn in front of his own building. Shang Tannen, standing under the willows, turned his head and nodded at her, but said nothing more. He continued to stare back at the river. Feiyu stopped and watched for a while. The robot worked quite well. It was not affected by the surrounding environment. It still sat steadily in the wooden barrel, concentrating on its work. Every time it bent down to pick the fruit, it was very light and graceful, and if the weather was sunny, the beauty of the picture would be even higher. She turned around and carried a stone into the house. Standing in the middle of the backyard, Feiyu looked up at the sky and operated the access control system. The roof of the backyard immediately extended from the main wall of the building, covering the entire backyard. However, even though the ceiling was transparent, Feiyu still felt that the yard was a little darker than before. She thought that maybe tonight she would practice chiseling stones while listening to the sound of rain. She walked out of the house again, ready to move another stone, and saw Shuang Tannen carrying a round wooden barrel and a robot carrying a basket, walking towards her. "Student Yan, you are home," Shuang Tannen smiled. "All my tests are completed. Is the river section still needed?" "No, thank you. If there's anything I can help with when dismantling the simulated scene, please let me know. I can come over anytime." Feiyu nodded, but did not respond. Her eyes were focused on the new version of Kegu. It had a rosier complexion and rounder cheeks, and stood obediently beside Shuang Tannen. Its simplicity was mixed with a bit of girlish shyness. It seemed as if it had just seen a stranger, and it just blinked its eyes and smiled with pursed lips. "Kegu, this is classmate Yan Feiyu." Shuang Tannen taught in a gentle voice. "The water sunflowers were raised by classmate Yan." "Thank you, classmate Yan." "Really?" Kegu raised her two heroic and healthy thick eyebrows, with an innocent and carefree look. After allowing people to communicate, her words were as cheerful as jumping beans. "Hello, Sister Yan, you are so beautiful, and the water sunflowers you raise are so fresh and tender. I wonder what tricks you use to grow such good water sunflowers. I came to your place today and picked a lot. Thank you so much. Next time you come to my house, I will take you to my pond to pick water sunflowers and water chestnuts together, okay?" Feiyu silently swept her eyes from Kegu's head to her feet. No one spoke to her. Her bionic eyes swept around Feiyu's face. Perhaps she realized that she had said too much at once, leaving her at a loss for words, and she smiled shyly and half-lowered her head. "Don't call her grandma anymore. This is the final version. Today, we're disconnecting the simulation data for final testing," Shuang Tannen explained, sighing softly. It passed. 20. Feiyu thought to herself, this was the 20th robot she had created based on her own simulations since enrolling at Zhonglan. Although her instructors repeatedly insisted that these could only be considered finished projects, young researchers new to the simulation industry couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction at the sight of their hard work, sometimes even jokingly calling them robot clones. Feiyu, like the finished product of her own project, still struggled to control it. She scrutinized Kegu's every movement with almost rigor. It came from her, but it didn't look like her. It was already very unlike her. She still felt like her own existence was being extended. This was the superficial sense of accomplishment that the A-class people teased themselves about, but it was the sense of accomplishment that young researchers, choosing this profession, found intoxicating. It was as if, with their own limited wisdom, they had guided the creation of a robot clone, a robot that, while they and the world were busy, would wander to a specific place of need and serve others. And they, after their work was done, left, concealing their achievements and fame, and continued to flourish. Very good. No mistakes, just one post, one content, 1619, one book, one bar. Take a look. Mr. Shuang, thank you for letting me see Kegu, Feiyu said. This is her rule. Every time the system developers give her feedback on the finished project, she will send a thank you email. Today, everyone is here, so she bowed and looked at Shuang Tannen seriously and said, "Thank you for making our cooperation a finished product. It's been a pleasure working together so far. This. Mr. Yan, you don't have to be so polite. I didn't do anything." Shuang Tannen was caught off guard and laughed after a while. "I'm very happy to. Send me a copy of Kegu's video." A faint smile appeared on Feiyu's lips. She was afraid that Shuang Tannen was doing system development independently for the first time and didn't understand the rules of the trade, so she reminded him, most scene designers have a hobby. They like to collect pictures of the finished projects they have done. I know. Shuang Tannen also smiled. "I will give you a formal feedback report later, okay? Thank you." The conversation was very harmonious. Shuang Tannen smiled again and said, "I can return all the picking tools I borrowed from you. This bucket is for you to put the water sunflowers in. Do you want the water sunflowers I picked today?" "No." Feiyu refused directly, and remembered something, "but if you want to give it to someone else, don't mention that I have the cooking method here." Or, I can send you a copy of the information, and you send the information to others, and don't let them come to me." As she said that, she really opened the communicator on the spot. Shuang Tian'an was stunned and explained awkwardly, "Last time, he has always been calm and composed, but at this time he didn't know what to say, and complained secretly. It seemed that Yu Qianchen had finally annoyed her. He just mentioned to Yu Qianchen casually last time that Miss Yan had a cooking method for water sunflower leaves. This was not a confidential matter, but after being told so solemnly by Feiyu, he suddenly felt like he was gossiping. "I've given you the information," Feiyu said seriously, oblivious to Shuang Tian'an's embarrassment. She glanced at the man and the machine carrying the things and said kindly, "The basket is filled with water sunflower leaves. You can take them along. When you're done, just leave them at my door. No need to tell me specifically." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35 Heavy Rain. Keigu looked up at the sky, her eyes rolling around, looking quite amused. Shuang Tian'an and Fei Zai had just exchanged a few words in front of the door when the sky darkened even further. Large, dark blue clouds rolled up, densely covering the sky. "Keigu, wait here for a moment. I'll go in and put the wooden barrel away for classmate Yan, and then we'll go back," Keigu said happily. "No need. You guys go ahead. I'll put it away myself," Fei Zai thought. The backyard was now littered with sample stones, and only those familiar with the place could find a place to stay. She didn't feel comfortable letting Shuang Tian'an in. Shuang Tian'an said no more, and with a smile, he gently placed the wooden barrel on the ground outside the doorway. "Classmate Yan, I'll take Keigu with me. You're busy. I hope the stone pot project is going well recently." He was afraid that Fei Zai would mistakenly think he was rushing her, so he said briefly, "If there's anything you need for the project, you can always video chat with me." "Yes, goodbye, Sister Yan," Keigu bowed. Fei Zai watched the man and his machine head west. Keigu and Shuang Tian'an, shoulder high, carried bamboo baskets, their backs slender and graceful. Shigu can be a bit more robust. Shuang Tian'an turned to see Fei Zai standing beside her car, still looking rather sullen. She met his gaze and said, "After all, Shigu uses strength." "Okay, I get it." Shuang Tian'an suppressed a smile and nodded. "I'll make a note of that." Fei Zai turned around, picked up the bucket, and went back inside. "Who is Shigu?" Keigu asked curiously. "Your sister will be working with you at the Ancient Culture Experience Hall," Shuang Tian'an smiled. The next person in Miss Yan's collection of finished robots for the simulation project was next. He had no doubt that Yan Fei Zai's collection would continue to grow indefinitely, each one a masterpiece. Fei Zai walked into the backyard. The light was growing darker. She turned on the light, and even briefly glanced at the pile of stones on the ground before her arm reflexively ached. In the afternoon, she began chiseling stone under the lamp. The rain remained steady, and instead of the romantic sound of the downpour outside, she was accompanied by the incessant, dull clanging of her own hammering. Another day of unproductive practice. Feiyu put the stone AOAO down from her arms, sighed, rubbed her arms, and went upstairs to rest. Late in the night, a torrential downpour finally began. The downpour, a torrential downpour, would go down in history at the Donglan Mechanical Research Institute. Feiyu was awakened by the shrill alarm of the access control system. This alarm was only triggered by a violent intrusion or a sudden internal security incident, and in over 2 years of living there, she had never had the pleasure of hearing it. She suddenly sat up in bed, a moment of daze. Before she could check the access control system, a mandatory push notification from the dormitory management system filled the communicator's projection screen. "Heavy rain has caused flooding. Heavy rain has caused flooding. West dormitory residents, evacuate to the Students' Activity Center immediately. Unconditionally. East dormitory residents, remain alert and do not sleep." Feiyu, startled, quickly got up and changed. She had a long reaction time, so even the most horrific situations wouldn't be immediately apparent to her. She appeared calm, but in reality, she was slow to react. So she didn't rush to open the window to peek outside. Otherwise, she might have been like her neighbors across the river, Qi Wei and the others, clinging to the window, staring blankly, before shouting, "Flooding! It's really flooding!" Everyone, move. Feiyu's small building remained dark and silent. She followed the school's instructions and immediately prepared to evacuate. Her movements were quicker than usual, but she still followed the procedure methodically. The first thing Feiyu did upon waking up was, of course, change out of her pajamas. As she rushed to the closet, her mind raced, thoughts racing. Sleeping naked was indeed a bad habit. No wonder the lady's teacher spoke of it with such disgust. Had the situation been more urgent, the flood could have rushed right up to the bed, leaving no time for a change. Would that have been incredibly embarrassing for someone sleeping naked? The closet opened, and the sensor light automatically activated. Feiyu grabbed a dress, the one she needed to wear the quickest. It was a deep purple, and Feiyu could analyze it as she slipped it on. The color was perfect. If it got wet, it wouldn't be noticeable, and she wouldn't be disrespectful. She was meticulous and somewhat rigid in her work. Since the school had ordered them to evacuate without any conditions, she didn't linger in the bedroom. She immediately skipped all the other steps she'd taken after getting up, even violating her principles of cleanliness and tidiness for the first time. She left the quilt piled on the bed in her pajamas, unfolded and draped on the closet rack. Dong, dong, dong. Feiyu ran and rushed down the stairs in the dark. She was used to walking up the stairs, so it was no problem for her. There was a splash, and she took a step down. She immediately realized something was wrong. Her home shoes were instantly soaked. She quickly retracted her foot, and only then did she think of turning on the lighting system. She looked down and was stunned. Her living room on the ground floor was like a muddy pool, and the water had flooded up to the third step of the stairs. It was over. The sample stones in the backyard must have been soaked in water. Feiyu calmed herself down, thinking that the stones were not a big deal, just like they grew on the mountain and got caught in the rain. She had to wade out and drive the hovercraft. Feiyu took another breath, thinking that it was not difficult. The water level in the house was only up to her knees, which would not affect her travel or the performance of the hovercraft. Before that, she might have to go down and open the shoe closet next to the stairs to get a pair of high boots first. Her home shoes were no longer enough. She didn't know how long she would be outside after evacuating. Going out without shoes could easily cause unnecessary secondary injuries. Feiyu glanced at the water level on the wall. During the moment she paused, there was no sign of the water rising. She quickly decided in her mind that getting shoes could be done, and it wouldn't take much time. With a snap, she continued to walk down the stairs in her home shoes. The water was very cool. With one step, it submerged her entire ankle. The next step reached her calf, and the third step submerged her kneecap. She lifted the hem of her skirt and walked carefully, trying not to slip. It was absolutely unreasonable to have a shoe closet on the ground floor. Feiyu pursed her face and waded into the water. In this busy time, those far-sighted ideas still had to squeeze into her mind and flash. From now on, she would have to keep at least one pair of shoes in the upstairs closet, otherwise, in special circumstances, such as when the entire downstairs was flooded or on fire, she would have to escape barefoot after changing clothes upstairs, which would be very inconvenient. Feiyu opened the shoe and hat closet, and the shoes on the bottom floor were already soaked in water. Her eyes went straight to the top floor, picked up a pair of shoes, and when she was about to turn around and leave, she had another idea. She put down her shoes and quickly put on a hanging raincoat. The raincoat was light and transparent, as thin as a cicada's wing, and had excellent waterproof performance. After putting it on, she picked up her shoes and waded to the door. The door opened, and the water outside suddenly rushed in. Feiyu was still thoughtful. She did not face the door directly, but stood to the side and held the wall. Even so, she was almost knocked down by the turbulent flow. With the light from inside the house, she glanced outside quickly and felt a little relieved. It was extremely dark outside, but the reflected light from the water showed that the water level outside was only at her thigh. In theory, if it leaked into the house at the same level as her thigh, everything would be fine. Chapter 36 Rescue. Feiyu was immersed in the water, holding onto the door frame, and turned half of her body out. The rain crackled, and her face was wet in an instant. There was a bamboo forest here, and the raindrops hitting the bamboo leaves were louder than the actual sound. Feiyu thought, and her eyes swept to the east. She saw a large dark outline of a bamboo forest, which was bulging on the water surface in the wind and rain, constantly swaying and deforming, as if it was being beaten hard, and as if it was trying to break free, but it was firmly locked at the bottom, so it could only flap and whistle at the upper half. Woo woo woo. The wind and rain smashed in, twisting and swaying around many bamboos in the depths, and the broken sound came out again. Feiyu thought that many bamboos in the bamboo forest would be bent now. Another association with the bamboo forest, the association that had subsided some time ago, the strange rustling sound that had appeared before, and the black water snake that disappeared, suddenly appeared inexplicably. But she suppressed it immediately, turned her head to the side, and gathered her consciousness. She walked along the west wall in the dark, and in her heart she was calmly complaining that the garage was separated from the main building, and one had to go out to get the car in the garage. This building design was also extremely unreasonable. The garage should have a side door leading directly to the main building, so that if something happened, the people in the house could escape directly to the garage without leaving the house. After the incident, she made a suggestion to the dormitory management office to open a door for her building. She thought. A beam of light shot from the distance in the air. Feiyu subconsciously looked up. In the dark night, 3 cars were vaguely visible on the opposite bank. 2 beams of light were heading towards Xin Yuhong and Xianqi's residence, and a beam of light suddenly came towards her. She immediately understood that it was the boys from Gibu on the other side of the bank who came to support her. She was very grateful. The neighbors didn't talk much, but they thought of looking out for each other in times of crisis. Qi Changgong was answering a video call and said quickly, "Tannen, it's okay. The 3 of us have already come out." Qi Wei and Fang Zhao went to see the 2 girls from classes C3 and D3 next door. "I'm here with Yan Shizhen, is classmate Yan okay?" Shang Tannen asked. Qi Changgong looked at the girl illuminated by the car lights. She was wearing a hooded raincoat, holding the hem of her skirt with her left hand, holding the outer wall with her right hand, and holding a pair of boots high. She was walking in the water, half raising her head, squinting her eyes and nodded at him. There was no panic on her face. In contrast, he was soaked, the corners of his clothes were still dripping, and his feet were bare. It was a horrible sight. Even though the situation was urgent, he couldn't help laughing. "She looks better than the rest of us. She's about to reach the garage. I'll drive to shine the light for her." The garage opened quickly. Feiyu turned around and hugged the door frame, feeling large clumps of water scramble over her waist and flood in. Her orange car immediately floated higher, swirling in the water halfway up the house. Qi Changgong's eyes tightened. It was at this moment that he was knocked down by the water. Instead of getting back into the car, he swallowed a belly full of water. "The water's still high, it's up to my waist. It shouldn't be like that." "Oh, I get it. Girls are always shorter than us," Qi Changgong said, still able to make a joke. He lowered the car, and the lights poured directly into the garage, illuminating the swaying car with a bright orange glow. Feiyu turned and glanced in the direction of Qi Changgong's car. Across the whitish water in the beam of light, she caught sight of a few green objects swaying. Looking closely, she saw that they were the water sunflowers she had kept in the experimental section of the river, scattered here. She didn't waste time feeling sorry for the rare plants, or even knowing who was in the car. Facing the light, she nodded at her nose and pointed toward the garage. "Yan Shizhen is going into the garage to pick up the car," Qi Changgong reported, intently watching Feiyu approach the orange car. Suddenly, he noticed she was wading through the water, still holding a pair of boots aloft. "What shoes? I don't have any." What do these girls think about at the critical moment? Just then, a series of beeps rang out from his own car. "The chassis has touched water." "Dear Guang, switch to surface drifting. What are you talking about? I need to fly and escape immediately," Qi Changgong muttered, then changed his tone. "I think drifting is fine. If Yan Shizhen can't get into her car, I'll let her swim out and pull her into mine." "Changgong, is the water that high over there?" Shang Tannen asked worriedly. "Yes. A huge flood. I've never seen anything like it." "Ouch!" Shang Tannen was practically stunned by the sudden scream. Qi Changgong chuckled. All right, Yan Shizhen's in the car. Much more nimble than me." Feiyu threw her boots into the car, pushed herself up, and scrambled inside. The sluggishness of her legs, swathed in water, vanished instantly. Her chest expanded as she breathed a sigh of relief, not even taking the time to dry her feet or put on her shoes before she immediately started the car. Outside the garage, the neighbor ascended into the air, her headlights blazing across the water, revealing only a wisp of the willow tree's crown. The few remaining branches swayed in all directions from the center of the canopy, a pathetic and odd sight. The small stream beneath the willows was gone. Feiyu abandoned her small building without a second glance, and the car shot out of the garage, soaring upwards. She turned and followed the neighbor's car ahead, heading towards Zin Yuhong and Zianqi's apartment. The two girls from Huxi were clearly not as prepared or as quick as she was. They had barely exited the gate. The three boys from Gui and Feiyu, along with 4 cars suspended high above, illuminated the two girls. Feiyu could see clearly that the two girls had already changed their clothes. She guessed they were slow to do so because they were in such a hurry. Like Feiyu, they followed a wall to the garage, but without their raincoats. Their heads, faces, and clothes were soaked, and they looked utterly miserable. Zin Yuhong, petite, was soaked to the point of just below her chest. Following behind Karen Mok, she walked even more cautiously, leaving everyone feeling uneasy. Karen Mok led the way, groping and moving slowly, stopping every few steps to glance back and offer a hand. Feiyu watched their mouths and thought one was shouting, "Yuhong, let's walk slowly." The other was responding, "Okay, Anki, be careful." The rain poured down on the two girls. Feiyu lowered the car onto the water. One of the three boys, perhaps worried about her, followed suit a moment later. Now, 4 cars were parked in front of the two girls' building, 2 floating in the air, 2 on the water. Anki, Yuhong, Feiyu opened the car door and called out through the rain. Any action? The car behind also opened its door, and a boy shouted even louder. Kate sent, "Zin Yuhong, stop driving. Each of you get in one of our cars and run." The two girls, leaning against the outer wall, soaked in the water. They wiped their faces, squinted hard, and looked inside the car. They called out, "Feiyu, Yiziagwang, it's you. Ah, good to see you all out." They looked at each other in the night rain, then at the nearby garage. Hesitantly, "Let's drive ourselves, then open the garage first, or you might get swept in by the current," Feiyu shouted. "Huh?" Kate couldn't hear clearly. "We're going in." Amid the chaos, a brighter light appeared from overhead. 2 silver-gray figures descended from the rain. They turned out to be 2 tall robots, each nimbly holding a girl in their arms. Students already in the cars preparing to evacuate. Please note, there are security robots on site assisting you. Please take off immediately and evacuate to the Students' Activity Center as instructed. Do not linger in the West Dormitory. Do not remain where you are. Evacuate immediately. A forced push command rang out from inside the car. Feiyu closed the door and rose into the air. Looking back, she saw that the garage doors of Zianqi and Zin Yuhong's cars had opened, and the robots had carried them into the cars. She circled above the bamboo forest, and the 3 cars from Unit GUI followed closely, circling together. The bamboo forest was completely submerged in water, and the leaves at the tops of the trees floated in clumps like large sheets of seaweed. In the small, single-person house of their neighbor to the east, lights were on from top to bottom. A security robot landed on his balcony, noticed their rotating headlights, raised its hand and pointed sharply eastward. Then, with a flash of light, it searched inside. The security robot has gone in, which means there are still people inside. Feiyu wondered inwardly. Why are the people from Unit G so slow? Chapter 37 Dongsu District. Soon, 2 hovercrafts rose above Zin Yuhong and Zianqi's building, accompanied by a hospital security vehicle. Flashing their powerful headlights, they sped toward the small convoy above the bamboo forest. The same forced push command, heard earlier, echoed from everyone's cars. Students who have already boarded the car and are preparing to evacuate, please note that there are security robots on site to assist your classmates. Please take off immediately and evacuate to the Students' Activity Center as quickly as possible according to the instructions. Do not linger in the West Dormitory area, do not linger where you are, and evacuate immediately. The security car hovered behind them, and its headlights cast a straight path of light towards the east. It even called out their names one by one. Students in the car, Qi Wei, Fang Zhao, Yiziagwang, Yan Feiwei, Zianqi, and Zin Yuhong. Please fly to the Students' Activity Center immediately. You must not delay for anyone or anything. If you observe any unknown situations on the way, you can report to the security department, and the security department will be responsible for handling it. 3 minutes ago, the West Dormitory area was fully taken over by the security department of the Dormitory Management Office. All students staying in the West Dormitory area are strictly prohibited from staying in this area without permission and must evacuate immediately. Class 3 Fan Chang, this kid overslept. Qi Wei shrugged, glancing at the security car behind their spinning cars, teleporting back and forth. The intention to drive them away was too obvious. He shone his headlights downward, but still no sign of anyone appeared at Fan Chang's building. Xiao Zhao, let's just ignore this guy. We've got 3 girls inside, and they're precious too. Fang Zhao chuckled through the video projection screen and shouted, ignore him, ignore him. We've got security here. We can carry this guy out even if he's sound asleep. Let's go. Any later and we'll be violating school rules. Qi Wei flew out along the tangent of his circle, and Fang Zhao followed closely behind. As he passed over Fan Chang's rooftop, he shone his headlights downward as well, just to check on him. Just then, Feiyu saw the door to the second-floor balcony open, and a security robot carried someone out. The security car, used to drive the crowd away, whizzed over and hovered outside the balcony, blocking Feiyu's view. Despite a quick glance, Feiyu still managed to make out Fan Chang's figure. He was only wearing an inappropriate art coat on his head and upper body, and only a pair of home shorts on his lower body, with bare arms and legs. This man sleeps well. Feiyu deduced that even the alarm of heavy rain and floods could not wake him up. When Yi Xiaoguang flew over the roof of Fan Cheng building, he shone his car lights down, probably wanting to express his condolences from a distance. Feiyu did not, and drove away. On the way, he kept encountering other vehicles, and the team became more and more powerful. Feiyu stared out the window. In the night, the rain was heavy, and the water below was faintly visible. It was already a vast ocean. Zisa district has beautiful scenery, but the terrain is low, and it is estimated that it has suffered serious damage this time. Across the forest, the high-rise buildings of Dongsu district are in front. The Students' Activity Center is located in the center of Dongsu district. Looking down from mid-air, the whole building is brightly lit. There were so many cars gathering there, like a flock of birds startled by the sudden downpour, all fluttering towards it. Feiyu squeezed in among them, circling slowly, listening to the parking lot dispatch, then finding a gap to continue circling. The robot, probably deployed on an emergency basis, spoke with a sense of haste. Students, you are all safe. Don't panic, don't crowd. Land when you hear your car number. Please do not leave or find parking on your own. All ground in Dongsu district is flooded, and all underground garages and buildings are blocked. Feiyu's neighbors, whether they had been called to land according to their car number or were waiting in the same small space as her, had long been dispersed by the huge swarm of cars. She listened to the dispatcher's repeated announcements from her car, occasionally looking down. The parking lot in front of the Students' Activity Center was a chaotic scene, filled with people and cars, splashing water everywhere. In the distance, a constant stream of car lights flashed in the sky. Dongsu district was originally high ground, but due to the torrential rain, the ground was still flooded, up to about calves. Not bad, she thought to herself. After a long while, she finally heard her car number being called. After landing, she put on her boots inside the car, with the boots higher than the water level, for safety. She pushed open the car door and went out, stepped into the water, twisted the hem of her skirt, adjusted a raincoat, and looked around. Many people were running fast in the rain, and some simply rolled up their trouser legs and ran barefoot, which was still a good thing. Some people were wearing very little, obviously jumping out of bed without changing clothes, just like Fan Chang, running out in whatever they were wearing. The scene was too chaotic, with the sound of rain, and she didn't see her neighbors, so she gathered up her raincoat and followed the crowd. At the entrance of the Students' Activity Center, someone was directing the students who were rushing in soaking wet, "Please come this way." Someone else handed over a towel, "Wipe it off." Qi Wei and others were standing not far away. After wiping his hair with a towel, he handed it to Fang Zhao. After Fang Zhao wiped it, Yi Xiaoguang took it. Despite the challenging conditions, the group shared towels, wiping just enough to wipe the rain off their heads and faces. Seeing them completely soaked, Shang Tenin suggested, "Xiaoguang, why don't you go to my dorm and dry off first?" "Never mind. It's raining so hard outside. What if your building gets evacuated soon? That's too much trouble. Let's wait." As they spoke, they peered toward the main entrance. People kept running in, drenched like drowned rats. They all did the same thing, an involuntary sigh, then a hand wiped the rain from their faces. A girl, gaited steadily, appeared at the entrance. She wore high boots, a purple skirt, and a thin raincoat. She nodded slightly to the student in charge and reached out to remove her rain hat. A student approached, holding one of the few towels, presumably asking if she wanted one. She gracefully shook her head and stepped aside, clearing the path to the entrance. Take a look at the 6-9 book forum. Most of the others were in a state of disarray, their clothes wet and disheveled, wiping their hair and twisting the corners of their clothes. She, alone, though, even had water dripping from the hem of her raincoat and skirt, and her face was soaked. She was far better prepared than most of the others in the hall, standing quietly in a corner, her whole appearance strikingly fresh and clean. Oh, Yan Shizhen is here too, Yi Xiaoguang pointed and smiled. I'm impressed. Look at her, then compare us. Qi Wei and Fang Zhao had gone to meet Zin Yuhong and Zianqi earlier and hadn't seen Fei Zi's appearance when she left. But they had seen the two girls and had even lingered outside their door for a long time. They had always assumed that girls were slow to get ready, and since it was so sudden, they must have been flustered. For her to manage to dress neatly like Zin Yuhong and Zianqi was already quite impressive. Unexpectedly, Fei Zi was even more well-groomed than any of them. Miss Yan's raincoat is enviable, Feng Zhao praised. Shuang Tanan greatly admired Yan Feiyu's composure, but it seemed natural to her. Yan Feiyu always gave people the impression of being calm and composed. Standing in a corner, she scanned the hall of the Students' Activity Center. Soon, she saw Yi Xiaoguang and the others nearby. Their eyes met, and she paused, smiling broadly at them. She was secretly surprised that, aside from Shuang Tanan, who was neatly dressed, all three of her neighbors were barefoot. It seemed they had left earlier than she had, unprepared. Chapter 38, Shelter. The hall was filled with a chaotic clamor. Groups of people buzzed with conversation, greeting each other, then exchanged pleasantries with other groups, shifting seats and gathering to chat again. The moisture from clothes, combined with body heat, began to evaporate, filling the entire space. This was a bustling refuge. Fei Zi stood there hesitantly, then took off her raincoat. Ignoring the remaining layer of moisture, she draped it over her elbow and walked straight towards Qi Wei and his companions. The neighbors were soaking wet and looked unattractive, so she shouldn't have greeted them face to face right away. However, she was grateful for their kindness so far. Fei Zi stopped 3 steps away from Qi Wei and his companions, smiled, and bowed slightly. Thank you for all the help in evacuating us just now. How is everyone doing? Oh, good, good. The neighbors seemed to be still recovering from the shock of this sudden downpour. They all spoke with their tongues tangled and could barely speak clearly. Yan, classmate Yan, are you okay too? I'm fine. Thank you, everyone. Feiyu politely focused her gaze on the faces of the 3 people who looked like drowned rats, and asked in a soft voice, I wonder who helped me with the lighting just now. Yi Xiaoguang. Feng Zhao saw Feiyu looking at him, scratched his head and said embarrassedly, Qi Wei and I went to see the 2 girls from Department Binganding, and didn't help you, classmate Yan. We all have to thank you, Feiyu said elegantly, turned to Yi Xiaoguang, bowed sincerely and said, Classmate Yi, thank you for your concern, and thank you everyone for your concern. No, nothing. Yi Xiaoguang waved his hands hurriedly, classmate Yan, why are you so polite? We are all neighbors, we have to help each other. Right, yes, Feiyu nodded in agreement, and her gaze moved to Shuang Tanan on the side. Late in the night, in addition to the wet-headed students from the West Dormitory, there were also quite a few neatly dressed people like him in the hall. They were all students living in the high-rise buildings in the East Dormitory, which was currently in a better situation, and they came to comfort their classmates and friends. She remembered the pile of stones in the backyard. Classmate Shuang, maybe the stone pot project, if she could postpone it for a few days, it was so familiar. Feiyu was helpless. Why did the cooperation projects with this GUI Sam Shuang Tanan always have bumps and setbacks one after another? Classmate Yan, Shuang Tanan smiled warmly and shook his head as soon as he opened his mouth. You don't have to worry about the project. It's good that everyone is evacuated safely now. I think after such a heavy rain disaster, the school will most likely adjust the project schedule for all the students in your West Dormitory. You don't have to worry too much about it. That's great. Yi Xiaoguang didn't have time to cheer. If that's the case, I can be driven out again in the middle of the night. You agree and I don't, Qi Wei said playfully. After thanking the neighbors, Fei Zi gave a fitting smile and said goodbye. Did you see Zianqi and Zin Yuhong come in? I'll go find them. They're in. They should be over there. I saw them ahead, Qi Wei pointed to a corner of the hall, where many girls were gathered, chattering. Any newcomer was hugged by a familiar face, as if they had truly survived a disaster. Feiyu thanked everyone again and turned to leave. Yan Shizhen is so friendly. Yi Xiaoguang watched her walk away before he muffled a cry of surprise. It's the first time I've seen it. Actually, Yan Shizhen doesn't have to come and thank you specially. I just shone some light on her. Miss Yan is well educated and always so friendly. Fang Zhao smiled and poked Qi Wei, right? A while ago, we went to inquire about her bamboo forest. She even gave us stools to sit on. Xiaoguang, you were trapped outside and didn't get to sit on it. That bamboo forest, Shang Tannen couldn't help but ask with concern. And the water sunflower experimental area that classmate Yan lent me for testing, how's it going? It's all flooded. Tannen, you didn't see that our place is full of water? Yi Xiaoguang waved his hand and said vividly, the water was still rising when we left. It's probably enough to drown people now. He suddenly stopped talking, blinked his eyes and thought about it, and slapped his thigh. Tannen, it's over. When I went to Yan Shizhen's place, I didn't seem to notice a large pool of water sunflowers with green leaves in the water. I did see one plant here and there. It's over, it's all washed away. Then what about your test, Tannen? The day after tomorrow is the last delivery date for our first project. I finished a final test during the day. Wow, such luck. That's right, it was just a coincidence. Otherwise, I'd have to beg Yan Shizhen to set you up. No matter how friendly she is, she probably wouldn't be able to do it. All of Donglan is flooded now. Shang Tannen listened to his classmates' happy jokes and glanced at Feiyu's back, slightly worried about something else. Her experimental area was now flooded. The water sunflowers she had been raising were transplanted from the Ancient Culture Experience Museum. I wondered if they needed to be returned to the museum, like the linen dress and the mahogany hairpin. Feiyu was walking through the hall, looking for Xin Yuhong and Xiangqi, or to see if her classmates from Section A had arrived, when someone ran towards her from the side. Student Yan, are you okay? Yu Qianjun asked, looking her over quickly. Feiyu was startled, suddenly being glared at and savagely glared at from head to toe, and then back again. The man parked so close, barely a palm's length away from blocking her path. She frowned, relaxed, and said, thank you for your concern. I'm fine, I'm glad you're okay, Yu Qianjun said with a smile. When I received the flood alert, I wanted to ask about the situation there, but I was afraid it would affect your evacuation. Feiyu was stunned by this man's excessive enthusiasm. How's your dorm? Yu Qianjun asked. The ground floor is flooded, Feiyu replied curtly. She knew he was concerned, but they'd only met a few times, and now he was asking her questions, seeming rather nagging. Huh? Yu Qianjun said sympathetically. Is it badly flooded? I don't know. The water's still rising. Feiyu frowned unconcealedly. This man's question was truly pointless. There was a flood, everyone had evacuated, and the rain was still pouring down. Sooner or later, it was bound to get badly flooded. Was there any need to ask specifically? Classmate Yan, do you need anything? I can get it for you back in the dorm. No, thank you, Feiyu said, trying her best to be polite. I'll go check over there. She started to walk. Unexpectedly, Yu Qianjun was still following her. Feiyu stopped after a few steps, feeling a sudden pang of displeasure. There were many girls gathered in that area, and almost all of them were dripping with water, and quite a few were barefoot. While there was nothing to be ashamed of during these extraordinary times, this guy hadn't offered a towel or a blanket, and it was completely unnecessary and impolite to follow him so openly. I'm going to go see my classmates. Excuse me, Feiyu emphasized the word excuse me. Chapter 39 Blanket. Feiyu found Xin Yuhong and Xiangqi among the other girls, standing together and talking. Even with the temperature control system in the hall, the two girls were still shivering in their wet clothes. Although Feiyu had more raincoats than them, they were still wet and she couldn't give them to the girls. Feiyu, you actually wore shoes, Karen Mock exclaimed enviously. I got up from the bed directly and almost went out in my pajamas. I didn't have time to look for shoes. Me too. I was so panicked that I even put on the wrong clothes and wasted quite some time, Xin Yuhong said with lingering fear. My hands were shaking at the time. I was so anxious that I couldn't go out without putting on my clothes properly. No matter how calm Feiyu was, she was still a girl in her 20s. When something unexpected happened, everyone was in a mess. They felt the same psychologically and became closer to each other than before. They couldn't help but smile. I was anxious too. It seems unreasonable for the shoe and hat closet to be downstairs. That's right, Karen mock pouted and looked at her bare feet. Look at my appearance. How can I let others call me a lady? The three of them laughed softly. A notice from the academy was quickly issued. All rooms in the Students' Activity Center are open for students in the West Dormitory to rest temporarily until daybreak, when further arrangements will be made by the dormitory administration. Students in the East Dormitory may still stay in their dormitories for a nap, but they must ensure they are fully prepared for evacuation at any time. The crowd in the hall rushed to the various activity rooms inside. Feiyu and two neighboring girls found a bare-body training room, with a few cushions on the floor. However, everyone followed the rules and, with their clothes wet, they consciously avoided sitting on the cushions. Everyone settled in, but it was difficult to rest immediately. The academy had always been peaceful. Events like tonight had never occurred before. Most people were still excited and nervous, worried about their dormitories being flooded. In the rooms, students, both acquaintances and not, were gathered in small groups, whispering to each other. Yuhong, are you cold? Feiyu looked at Zin Yuhong, hugging her knees tightly. The floor is cold, Zin Yuhong pouted. Feiyu looked at Zin Yuhong sympathetically. Her own clothes weren't that wet, yet she still felt cold even sitting on the floor, let alone the two girls. I'll go out and see if there are seats in some conference rooms that might be better. If there's any vacancy, I'll come get you, said Karen Mock, standing up. Not long after, Karen Mock returned from her walk, happily bringing a female classmate with her. It was Karen Mock's good friend, and she kindly invited the three of them to her dorm to change. You guys go to my room and dry your clothes first. It's okay. When I just came in, many people were leaving, heading to our East Dormitory classmates' rooms to freshen up. The school hasn't ordered the East Dormitory to evacuate, and the water outside is only up to their calves, so there won't be any problems for now. It's the same whether you wait here or in my dorm. Come over to my place. You'll get sick from all the wet clothes clinging to you. The girl shared Karen Mock's personality, cheerful and generous, and extremely welcoming. Zin Yuhong, who lived in the same building as Karen Mock and knew her friend well, quickly thanked her and prepared to follow. I'm not going. I'm not that wet, Feiyu declined with a smile. The dormitory in the East Dormitory district probably wouldn't be spacious, and since she didn't need to change clothes, she didn't want to bother them. Xianqi and her friends wanted to persuade her again, but Feiyu shook her head and declined. You guys go ahead. I'll just rest here. After the two neighbor girls left with their classmates, Feiyu hugged her knees and closed her eyes. It was still some time before dawn, so she had to take a break. Shuang Tanan carried a pile of blankets and walked from room to room. The Students' Activity Center didn't have many items to keep warm at night. They had a hard time finding some thin blankets in the warehouse. Usually, they were prepared for physical training, but now they had to give them priority to the girls. He peeked in at the door. The physical training room was quite large, with more than 10 people sitting there, more than half of whom were girls. Sorry, there are not enough blankets, he apologized softly to the boy at the door. The boy stretched out his hand, then retracted it, smiling and shaking his head. Classmate, do you need a blanket? Shuang Tanan asked the girl. Thank you. He distributed them one by one, and unexpectedly saw Feiyu in the corner. She was sitting on the ground with her body bent, her head on her knees, sleeping peacefully, revealing a section of her fair neck. Although her face could not be seen clearly, the elegant purple dress, the raincoat, and the boots, could only belong to the well-prepared Miss Yan. Classmate, do you need a blanket? Shuang Tanan asked in a low voice. The girl opposite nodded slightly. Thank you. She reached out and took the last blanket in his hand. Shuang Tanan looked at Feiyu, hesitated a little, tiptoed and turned to leave. Unexpectedly, Feiyu had not slept very well to begin with. When she heard the voice beside her, she looked up drowsily and met Shuang Tanan. She opened her eyes and looked at him blankly. Shuang Tanan paused, walked over to Feiyu, and squatted down, apologetically whispering, Student Yan, I'm sorry, the blankets are all gone. Please wait a moment, I'll go to my classmates and see if they have any more. Feiyu stared at Shuang Tanan silently, a red mark on one side of her face obvious. She was in a state of confusion after waking up. Shuang Tanan was stared at by her black and white eyes, wondering if Miss Yan had not fallen asleep earlier and the blankets were gone when they reached her. She might be a little angry. Student Yan, there are not many blankets in the activity center. I'll go look for them again, he explained. Feiyu slowly understood and shook her head, saying, no, thank you. Xiang Tannen glanced at her and got up to leave. He found a few students who were distributing blankets and asked them. As expected, they had all been distributed. He felt very sorry for Feiyu's polite thanks. When he walked to Feixu's room with a blanket again, he unexpectedly saw another person beside Feiyu at the door. He was half kneeling with his knees on the ground, and was talking and laughing with her in a low voice with his head tilted. When he looked closely, it was Yu Qianchen. Miss Yan, on the other hand, sat upright with her back straight, hugging her knees, with a dull expression, as if she didn't respond much. She raised her eyes and looked straight at him. Yu Qianchen followed Feixu's line of sight and turned to look at him. Qianchen, are you here? Xiang Tannen walked over and greeted him. I just saw classmate Yan, so I came to chat for a while. Yu Qianchen smiled and looked at the plain green thin blanket in Xiang Tannen's hand. Classmate Yan, I found a blanket. Do you need it? Xiang Tannen handed the blanket to Feiyu. To his surprise, Feiyu reached out and took it, unrolling it and wrapping it around her without a trace of disdain. Thank you, I can rest now, Feiyu said, gathering the blanket closer. Yu Qianchen stood up. Student Yan, you rest first. If you need any help, just let us know. The numbness in his legs quietly spread to his feet. He stood, bent over, staring at the base of Feiyu's forehead in the dim light of the room, and whispered in a low voice, I'll be at the activity center. Go somewhere else and see our students in Class C. Feel free to come to us if you need anything. Xiang Tannen smiled and nodded. Feiyu looked up, silently glancing at the two people in front of her, and after a long pause, he hummed, Please help yourself, thank you. The two walked to the corridor. Yu Qianchen looked back into the room, closed the door of the body training room thoughtfully, turned his head to face Xiang Tannen, grinned, and said in a low voice, Tannen, you are very busy tonight. I saw you in the lobby earlier. The dormitory management office has activated the students' activity center as a temporary resting point and sent us a notice to come and take care of it. Yu Qianchen knew that Xiang Tannen also had a part-time job at the students' activity center on weekdays, and was mainly responsible for the management of the robots here. He patted Xiang Tannen on the shoulder and said sympathetically, Thank you for your hard work. It's so chaotic tonight, can't you rest? Not bad. But then again, it's raining outside and I dare not sleep. That's right, I feel uneasy. Many people in our building have come out, Yu Qianchen said. We should be ready to evacuate at any time. You might as well come and see your classmates. Hey, where did you find the blanket? It looks so familiar. It's mine. It's standard in the dormitory. Xiang Tannen smiled helplessly. There are not enough blankets in the activity center, and classmate Yan didn't get one. It just so happens that I have an unused blanket in my dormitory. I thought if classmate Yan doesn't want it, he could give it to my classmate. The boys here don't have blankets, and it's still quite cold at night. Yeah, Yu Qianchen felt a little regretful in his heart. Why didn't he think of getting a blanket? He also had an unused one in his dormitory. Chapter 40 Voluntary and Equal Action. After dawn, the rain continued to fall. Feiyu received another notice from the school. Due to the severe damage in the West Dormitory, the dormitory management office had arranged temporary housing for students in the East Dormitory, interspersed among the vacant rooms in the various dormitories. The neighbors surrounding the river island were all assigned to the same building, on the same floor. Coincidentally, Feiyu's left neighbors were still Xin Yuhong and Xiangqi, and across the hallway were Qi Wei, Fang Zhao, and Yi Xiaguang, three male students from the GUI department. After a restless night, everyone reunited in the hallway, exhausted, searching for their respective rooms and wishing each other good morning. Click, click, click. Another person approached. Qi Wei turned. Hey, Fan Chang. Good morning, everyone. Fan Chang forced a smile, his face still grim. He looked much better than he had the night before, though. Perhaps a friend in the East Dormitory had borrowed his clothes, and he was now very well dressed. Last night we wanted to wait for you to leave together, but security wouldn't let us. I saw security called you out pretty quickly. Fang Zhao chuckled, but since there were girls in the corridor, he stopped joking. I saw car lights when I came out, so I guess it was you guys. Feiyu was not surprised to see him walk to the room next to her on the right. The dormitory management office must have arranged the rooms according to their location in the dormitory building in the West District. However, When she saw his dark coat, her mind couldn't help but revisit the image of him bare arms and legs in the light and rain last night. Nodding slightly, she didn't say anything to him and pushed the door open and went in. Classes were suspended throughout England. The corridor was quiet in the morning, and almost everyone stayed up all night. In the afternoon, people came out one after another and gathered in the public restroom on the floor to discuss and sigh with each other. Feiyu, the rain has subsided outside. We want to go back and get some clothes. Are you going? Zhang knocked on the door. Can we go back? Feiyu asked in surprise. Did the West dormitory be taken over by the security department? That was last night. It said some people went back at noon today, and I haven't heard any comments from the dormitory management office. We guess the courtyard isn't well equipped with robots, and now even the housekeeping robots seem to be helping with the flood control. The courtyard is overwhelmed and can't handle it. Feiyu naturally had to go. The temporary dormitory had all the beds and bedding, but no personal belongings, which was inconvenient. She nodded, and saw Zin Yuhong behind Zhang smiled and turned to call into the hallway. Feiyu is going to, okay, add one more, the other end responded. Feiyu followed the two girls in and realized this was a big operation. The common room was full of people, including her neighbors. As she entered the door, she saw Fan Cheng sitting extremely straight across from her, his fists clenched on his knees, his brow furrowed, his lips biting, as if he was deeply contemplating something. There were many unfamiliar faces in the room, listening intently. Okay, Qi Wei, who was standing in the middle of a circle of seats, nodded to the three girls who came in. The person sitting on a long sofa by the door turned his head and glanced. Then stood up immediately, and immediately led the people around him to stand up and offer their seats. Zin, Yan, sit down, sit down. Feiyu took a look and found that she didn't know this person, but his attitude was very familiar, as if he knew them very well. She did know one of the two people next to him, who was her current project partner, Shang Tannen. Classmates, you sit down. Shang Tannen smiled at them and said softly. The boys moved quickly, and fearing that the girls would still refuse, they squeezed in on the seats next to them and sat down. Feiyu thanked Zhang and others and sat down as well. We have a total of 11 places now, Qi Wixu coughed and continued. He faced the three girls specifically and said, let me repeat what I just said first, in case some of you didn't hear it. It's like this, we have 11 buildings in total, all in one group. But although we say we are in one group, there is actually some distance between each of our buildings, and this distance is flooded. So, we will go together and come back together, so that if anything happens, we can take care of each other. Of course, if the dormitory management office has any objections, with so many people, hey, they won't say anything. The others laughed a few times, but Feiyu just raised her eyebrows. As long as the hospital had no express prohibitions, she felt that it was okay to do it, and she didn't think there was anything wrong with it. However, Fan Cheng on the other side didn't laugh much either. Feiyu was facing him, and by the way, she saw his expression and felt that he seemed to be worried about something. Let's take a look now to see if there's anyone who can't swim. Qi Wei looked around the room. No one spoke, so he stared at the three new girls with a worried look on his face and asked again, is there anyone who can't swim? I can, Zhang muttered, and Zin Yuhong smiled softly, which also showed that she could swim. Qi Wei's eyes then swept over Feiyu's face one by one. Miss Yan always had few expressions, and now she was being looked at by him, her eyes meeting his. Qi Wei, go on. Fang Zhao waved his hand, a little reluctant to believe in the ability of this temporary leader who had volunteered to coordinate matters, and urged, we all know how to swim. Hurry up, next one, Yan Shizhen diving, and Yan Shizhen are all great. Qi Wei came to his senses immediately, turned his head sheepishly, and pulled his hands away from the audience, raising and pressing them twice before coughing. Calm down, calm down. We've got to think through every detail. Next, the car. We just discussed this. Our cars are all parked in the Student Activity Center parking lot. The school said they'll have a centralized maintenance service for us. We won't use our own cars for now, to avoid the parking lot's dispatch robot nagging us. Now that the ground in the East Residence District has receded, the underground garage has been unsealed. Oh, and some good friends have offered to send it over for us. Thank you, Wu Jia couldn't help himself. Qi Wei, stop talking nonsense. Are you going or not? We're just waiting for the car assignment. Whoever gets in the car will be assigned, and we can leave once the assignment is made." Amidst the tumultuous laughter, Feiyu glanced at Kate and Xin Yuhang in surprise. Instead of driving her own car, a good friend would drive her? She didn't have any good friends. Kate and Xin Yuhang also looked at each other. Wu Jia was sitting on the armrest of the sofa next to them. Seeing this, he said, "It's okay. We'll go and drive you. You don't have classes all day anyway." Someone in the building next door went there at noon and did the same thing. He was lively and enthusiastic by nature, and he leaned over to explain, "Look, we'll drive the car and hover outside the balcony railing and let you in from the balcony. It's better than you driving your own car floating on the water and waiting in and getting soaked. It's been raining all day and all night, and the water level there must still be high." Feiyu watched and listened, and glanced at Shuang Tannen next to Wu Jia, and saw him smile. "Then I'll give classmate Yan a ride. If classmate Yan's scenery items need to be moved and sorted, I can also help." Before Feiyu could answer, Wu Jia said yes. "Then Zi and Xin will take my car, if that's okay with you too." Zianqi and Xin Yuhang hurriedly thanked them. Wu Jia raised his arm and reported, "Qi Wei, here are 2 cars reserved for Tannen and me." Shuang Tannen glanced at Feiyu, smiled, and interrupted, "I can take one more person in my car." Qi Wei nodded, not bothering to respond. He stood in the middle of the room, waving his arms and pointing, busy arranging cars and people. After a long pause, he sighed, "That's it." Many students from the East Dormitory District enthusiastically helped, so in the end, Shuang Tannen was only assigned to Feiyu. "Whether you know her or not, we're all friends. Make sure you recognize her face and don't get in the wrong car," Qi Wei joked. Everyone laughed, and the couples who were sitting far away vacated their seats and gathered together. Feiyu and the others didn't need to move. She sat there, and as host Qi Wei scurried off, she caught a glimpse of Fan Chang, his head tilted to the side, talking to a boy next to him. Clearly, the couple knew each other. Let's go, Qi Wei called out. Fan Chang looked up, his gaze meeting Feiyu's. He seemed startled, paused, then twitched his lips, lowering his gaze to the person beside him. "The fear still lingers, from last night until now," Feiyu commented. Everyone rushed out of their seats. The 3 girls from Feiyu, Wu Jiashang, Tannen, and the others also stood up. Just as they walked out of the door of the public restroom, they heard Qi Wei yelling again from inside, "Everyone, walk slowly. Wait a minute. There is one last thing I want to remind everyone. Don't go through the main door. There will be water. I suggest jumping in from the balcony." "Got it." Yi Xiaoguang couldn't stand it anymore and shouted back, "Qi Wei, are you going to leave or not?" "I'm going to take a ride first." A group of people laughed and went downstairs in a mighty manner. "One last thing," Qi Wei shouted hurriedly from the back of the crowd, "Everyone, this is an unorganized action. There is no initiator. There is no initiator. Everyone is voluntary and equal." Chapter 41 Hover. "Thank you for taking me there," Feiyu thanked him as soon as she got in the car. "You're welcome." Shuang Tannen smiled and shook his head. He stared at the line slowly lining up toward the garage exit as he greeted, "Student Yan, did you get some rest last night?" "Not bad." "Do you live in this building?" Feiyu asked. She watched as everyone headed straight for the basement to retrieve their cars, eliminating the need to go to other buildings. "Yes, I'm on the 9th floor. Many of our classmates from Department GUI live in this building. We met up at noon to visit Qi Wei and the others." Feiyu nodded. No wonder so many people had gathered so quickly after a nap after the disaster. Shuang Tannen's car sped out of the garage, circling along the designated route between the buildings in the East Dormitory District. He peeked out mid-air. A steady stream of rain fell. "Still raining," he said, and when he heard a hum from the other side, he suddenly realized how quiet the car had been, having been so focused on driving out of the garage. "How are your classmates from Department A?" he asked, trying to find a topic to talk about. "I don't know." Shuang Tannen subconsciously glanced sideways at her, a bit surprised. "I don't know the specific situation, I just know that the students in Class A and Class B in the West Dormitory should have all come out and settled down. I don't know the situation of the younger and older students." Feiyu met his gaze and added to the story. "It's the same for us. We don't have many opportunities to interact with younger and older students." Shuang Tannen smiled. After these 2 sentences, the car fell into silence again. He thought that probably no student in the West Dormitory got a good night's sleep last night, and Miss Yan must have been in a bad mood, so he didn't take the initiative to speak again. After a while, Feiyu spoke. Student Xiang, thank you for giving me the blanket last night. It was a mess. Where did you find it? How can I return it later? Oh, just give it to me. Xiang Tianan thought again, and realized that the students in the West Dormitory were in short supply of daily necessities, so he said softly, don't worry, if you still need it, just use it. Feiyu paused, pondering these words, and stared at Xiang Tianan in confusion. Where's the blanket from? Aren't they recycled? I took it from the dormitory. Yours? Feiyu looked at him with a surprised expression. I haven't used it, Xiang Tianan explained hurriedly. Feiyu closed her mouth and nodded. After a while, she said, I'll return it to you when I get back. She labeled her project partner a good person. Although she was actually reluctant to use other people's things, especially a young man she didn't know very well, but in the environment last night, just going in and out of the student activity center in the rain, going back and forth to the dormitory to get things, and giving warmth to a classmate who was not related to her, this behavior was worthy of her gratitude. Xiang Tianan was not bad. Xiang Tianan's hovercraft followed the convoy all the way west. Crossing the forest belt, he couldn't help but straighten up and look down. The West Dormitory district was like soaking in a huge lake that appeared out of thin air. The water was muddy, with scattered garbage floating everywhere, and even whole trees with roots and branches. The situation was really bad. He looked at Feiyu beside him. She was also looking down, but her expression was very calm. The buildings near the river island were all submerged, separated only by the vast expanse of lake water. The former front lawns and flower beds were completely submerged. The peach blossom grove behind Feiyu Tower had almost vanished, leaving only fragments of tall, dark branches jutting out of the water, occasionally blocking a few bamboo leaves blown in by the torrential rain, or dangling a few slender, still washed, water sunflowers. From the air, the scene looked bleak and dilapidated. The convoy dispersed, and Xiang Tianan slowly approached Feiyu's balcony. Hovercrafts are said to be amphibious, but they primarily fly in the air. Landing and landing are their primary uses, with the occasional boat trip on the water being used for recreational purposes. Therefore, the mid-air hovering function is rarely used, lasting only about 10 minutes. The villa balconies in Zixia district are all open. After a night of heavy rain, the railings were slippery, and a thin, bright layer of water could be seen on the ground. The tables and chairs on the balconies were completely soaked, leaving a mess. The balcony was built in and did not protrude outwards. Xiang Tianan could not drive the car into the balcony and could only hover as close to the railing as possible. Be careful when you jump down. Yeah, as the car door opened, the cold wind and rain blew in Feiyu's face. She did not wear a raincoat today and only wore a thin skirt. She could not help but shiver. The railing was waist-high. She looked at the ground of the balcony and was about to jump down. Student Yan, Xiang Tianan suddenly stopped and suggested, why don't I get off first and pick you up later? Feiyu shook her head. Although the hover car can be controlled automatically, it is always inappropriate to hover in the air without anyone in the car. She jumped down with her hand on the car door. When she landed, the soles of her boots slipped and she almost fell to her knees. Fortunately, her palms supported her. Student Yan, are you okay? Xiang Tianan asked anxiously. Feiyu stood up straight, raised her head and smiled, her face slightly wet by the fine rain, revealing a cold jade-like luster. Her hair was not tied up as usual, but hung down over her shoulders. It looked a little messy because of the stumble just now, and her hair was quickly covered with a layer of mist like mist. Xiang Tianan looked at her whole face exposed in the rain. The smile on her face was genuine and humble, which was very different from her usual solemn and arrogant look. The smile disappeared in an instant, as if it was specially answered to his question. Then she turned around and walked inside, and the corner of her purple skirt swirled into a graceful little arc. Xiang Tianan waited in the car, and looking from a distance, he saw that the hover cars in front of several surrounding buildings were also parked on the balconies in the same way. He glanced toward Qi Wei and his family's villa. Amidst the white water, only a few long willow branches lay spread out on the surface, marking the spot where the silk willows had once stood. Yesterday, that spot had been filled with water sunflowers, with Kegu working bent over them. Today, not a single water sunflower remained, only a few broken branches and leaves carried down by the floodwaters, swirling among the willow's canopies. Xiang Tianan's car was pointed east. Looking over, he saw that much of the bamboo forest had been destroyed, offering a wider view. The building ahead stood alone in the murky water. Above the surface, the same pale white exterior walls as Fei's eyes were splattered with the yellow stains. Just then, the neighbor to the east arrived. Their blue-black car circled the house several times, even skimming back and forth across that section of the bamboo forest. Shuang Tian'an shook his head. The disaster situation in Zisa district was not optimistic. He thought that after the water was drained, indoor and outdoor dredging and cleaning were carried out, and the houses were renovated and re-inspected, the students affected in Zisa district might not be able to move back in the near future. Not long after, a blue-black car approached the second floor, and a person jumped down into the balcony. What puzzled Shuang Tian'an was that the car did not continue to wait by the railing like him or Wu Jia and other classmates, but took off immediately, circling around the front and back of the building. Is there a problem with the hovering function? Shuang Tian'an couldn't help but look at it a few more times with concern. He remembered that Feiyu's eastern neighbor was a student from Department B, and it seemed that he was also brought here by a student from Department B, not their classmate Gui-san. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42 The Open Courtyard Roof. Feiyu packed up quickly and walked out of the balcony with her backpack. Shuang Tian'an leaned out and took Feiyu's bag. Student Yan, do you want to take some more things? You may have to stay in the temporary dormitory for a while. Feiyu raised her hand to support the bottom of the backpack, tilted her face up and blinked twice. A layer of moisture covered her delicate eyelashes, making her eyes look even darker and more lively. She thought for 2 seconds and hesitated a little. You go, I'll wait here. Feiyu smiled apologetically, turned around and left. Shuang Tian'an looked at her back, and a more obvious strange feeling passed through his heart. Miss Yan's smile also had a hint of shyness. Feiyu went in and packed another bag. She felt that Shuang Tian'an's analysis made sense, and she should have taken more. It's just that girls always wear sets of clothes. When she took out a set of clothes and pants, she suddenly realized that they didn't match the pair of boots on her feet. Going downstairs to get another pair of shoes was out of the question. Shuang Tian'an's car was parked outside, and she couldn't keep him waiting for too long. Besides, the downstairs was now flooded, and the water level was even higher than when she left last night, so she would have to make do with this pair of high boots for the next few days. If she was escaping, she would definitely take whatever she could, but now she had come back to get clothes, and she would need to think about it a little bit if she was going out wearing weird clothes in the next few days. Feiyu's hand paused, and after a moment of hesitation, she pushed the clothes back and picked up another skirt. A skirt with high boots. Outside the balcony, the wind and rain kept blowing, hitting her face and hands, causing her to shiver again after coming out of the room in thin clothes. Feiyu dragged a chair to prop up her feet, but it was still some distance away from the car door pedal. Shuang Tian'an took the bag and handed it to Feiyu. She stood on the stool, her eyes just level with Shuang Tian'an, and seeing his gentle expression and kind face, she paused for a second, then extended her hand. Shuang Tian'an held her and touched her, only to feel that Fixu's hand bones were slender and very cold, like ice and jade. He exerted a little force and pulled Fixu into the car. She immediately brought a wave of dampness into the car. The hem of Fixu's skirt was stained with the accumulated water on the ground when she stumbled out of the car earlier. She didn't feel any hindrance when she walked, but now it was very uncomfortable when she sat. Her hair was also wet, hanging down to the side of her neck, with some small water droplets condensed on the ends of her hair. Do you want to wipe it with something? Shuang Tian'an kindly reminded her, and she said oh and looked at the backpack in the back seat. He turned sideways and reached out to help feel around in the back seat. Which one? I'll get it for you. Black. Shuang Tian'an handed her the bag, then sat up straight, looked out the window, and asked for the next move with a smile. It seems like you're the fastest. We'll have to wait for them next. His eyes weren't on her, but Feiyu nodded secretly, showing that he was a gentle and polite person. She lowered her eyes, hummed casually, and opened her bag very straightforwardly, digging out a towel from the bottom of her pile of colorful daily necessities. She tilted her head to glance at him again, lifted the ends of her hair, covered it with the towel to dry it, and looked forward. Is he looking for something? Feiyu was a little surprised. Next to Fan Chang's building, the blue-black car flew around at a very slow speed, almost brushing against the bamboo leaves when it was above the bamboo forest. Probably doesn't want to hover, Shang Tanin continued. Feiyu nodded. Student Yan, the water lilies have all been washed away. What are you going to do with your lab area? It's just that there's nothing to do. It's okay. Shang Tanin felt relieved. That's good. What about the stones from the stone pot project? They should be soaked in water now. Feiyu suddenly thought she could go take a look. Student Shang, can you go around to the back of my building so I can open the roof of the backyard? Shang Tanin naturally agreed. The car drove around to the back of the building, and Feiyu controlled the access control system. The roof of the backyard slowly retracted into the wall of the main building. The two stared down for a moment, then exchanged a glance. There was nothing to see. The small courtyard was also a pool of water. The water was murky and deep, and the jacaranda tree was submerged halfway up the tree. Her sample stones, which were rolling all over the ground, were all underwater, not even a hint of them breaking the surface. I'll check the condition after the water recedes. There's basically no problem, Feiyu said calmly. She hadn't made a deep dent in it anyway, so there was no need to worry if it got damaged. If it's no longer usable, the Ancient Culture Experience Center still has a lot to offer. Well, don't worry about that for now, Shang Tanin said comfortingly. Let's wait until the water recedes. I can come and help then. He glanced at Feiyu again, seeing her finishing wiping her hair with the towel. Do you want to put your bag back? Okay. Feiyu stuffed the towel back into her bag. Shang Tanin took the bag and put it back in the back. Turning around, he met Feiyu's slightly hesitant gaze and blurted out, anything else? Another bag? Feiyu didn't hesitate, she felt a little cold. After Shang Tanin handed it to her, she pulled out a large shawl. Thank you, she said a little embarrassedly. Shang Tanin helped her carry it back and forth several times. You're welcome. Shang Tanin saw Feiyu wrapped in a shawl. The shawl was silky and luxurious, yet it was only a thin layer. Are you cold? Do you want me to turn up the temperature in the car? No, this is fine. Feiyu shook her head in denial. She was already damp, and the overheated car would make her even more uncomfortable. Shang Tanin didn't force her, but inquired, should we wait here, or go wait with one of our classmates? Feiyu looked out the car. They were now above the peach blossom forest. In front of the two girls' building on the west side of the river, Wu Jia's car was leaving the balcony and began to circle, apparently exceeding the maximum allowed hovering time. Indeed, she had already been in and out of the house twice, and getting things from the car had also taken up quite a bit of time. Looking at the neighbor to the east, across the bamboo forest, Lan Hezi's car had been circling non-stop, now whirring further out over the water. Feiyu almost thought the car didn't want to wait for a Fancheng anymore. The drizzle was falling, the water was vast, and every tree or building within it was eye-catching. From Feiyu's position, Shang Tanin could see the entire back of Fancheng's small building to the east, the small courtyard also with its roof open. The two single buildings should have the same layout. The dormitory management office had also planted a tree in Fancheng's courtyard, which was about the same height as Feiyu's jacaranda tree, with a dense crown, and both trees were taller than the courtyard wall, making it very conspicuous. Feiyu looked again and couldn't help but stare, but it seemed that someone was climbing up the tree with a ladder, wearing only shorts, with bare legs. She and Shang Tanin met eyes again at the same time. Feiyu turned her head away, her eyes shifting to her own jacaranda tree. The jacaranda trees were already in bloom, the buds were only slightly raised, and only a few small green grains remained on the branches. They were neither edible nor interesting to admire. This person took off his pants and climbed up the tree, but what was he doing? Where are we going? Shang Tanin asked, his eyes fixed on the east with concern. Xianqi and Xin Yuhong's place, Feiyu answered without hesitation. She didn't know Fancheng very well, so naturally she was concerned about the girls first. Shang Tanin glanced east again, and by chance the roof of the shed over there was slowly being lifted up towards the courtyard wall, about to cover it. A blue-black car was coming back from a distance. He thought that Fancheng's place wouldn't be in any danger, after all, his classmates were still looking after it. Okay, he turned the car around and headed west to where the two girls lived. Chapter 43 Looking for Shoes. Feiyu frowned. Why didn't either Xin Yuhong or Xianqi come out? Student Shang, please pull over so I can call them, she said. Feiyu and the two girls next door were in different majors. Although they had been neighbors for 2 or 3 years, they were separated by a river, so they didn't visit each other often. They had visited each other once when the freshmen first moved in, and later they would smile and greet each other when they saw each other from across the river. They would also support each other when the housekeeping robots were not in place and cleaning supplies were scarce. However, apart from her female classmates from Jia Sanli, these two were the few people she knew in Donglan. Yu Hong, Anki, Feiyu leaned out of the car and raised her voice. Her voice was crisp and her tone was normal, but with her serious expression, it could come across as cold. Now she shouted at the top of her lungs, braving the wind and rain, revealing a bit of concern, but also with the fragility of a typical girl. Feiyu called out twice before a response came from the house. Fixius, wait a moment, they are downstairs. Feiyu retreated into the car. Downstairs, Shang Tanin looked at Feiyu in confusion. It was raining heavily outside, and in the short time that she had stuck her head out to call out, Feiyu's face was already covered with a layer of obvious moisture, and tiny water droplets like morning dew fell on the top of her hair. Do you want to wipe it again? He couldn't help but ask, turning around to help her with the bag. No, Feiyu raised her hand and touched her cheek nonchalantly. Her 5 slender fingers brushed twice and then lightly pressed on the top of her head, making her palm wet. She grabbed a corner of her shawl and gathered it slightly. Shang Tanin's eyes fell on her hand. A string of dark green stone beads made her fair wrists even more delicate and slender. His gaze paused briefly, then averted. Feiyu's cheeks had been wiped dry by her, but her eyelashes were still wet, and the untouched parts of her head were playfully stained with the water droplets. He didn't bother to remind her, only asking, why did they go downstairs? Maybe they need to get shoes. Feiyu felt sympathetic and understanding for the two girls. When they left today, they were wearing the simple home shoes provided by the temporary dormitory. They wouldn't be able to go out like that for the next few days, so getting shoes was essential. The water level on the first floor is very high. Shang Tanin frowned. Feiyu was also a little worried. I'll go check. Shang Tanin paused for a moment, then nodded. Be careful, and tell those 2 students not to force themselves. If you need help, call Wu Jia and me. Feiyu agreed, jumped down, and almost fell again. Yu Hong, Anki, I'm coming in, she called from the balcony. As she walked all the way in sight and turned the corner of the stairs, she was stunned. Almost half the room downstairs was flooded, a sense of overwhelming power. Although they shared the villa in Zisu district, aside from the shared living room and kitchen, every other area was clearly separated for daily living, ensuring extreme privacy. There were even 2 staircases, each with its own shoe closet. At this moment, Karen Mok stood in front of the shoe closet at the other staircase, mostly submerged in water, barely reaching her chest. She tilted her head back, presumably selecting shoes from the upper level. Xin Yu Hong, however, was nowhere to be seen. Only her voice could be heard. Feizai, is that you? Judging from her voice, she must be in the shoe closet at Feizai's side of the stairs. Yes, I'm so glad. I still have shoes that aren't wet. I have shoes that aren't wet, too, Xin Yu Hong said cheerfully. Feizai, are they getting impatient waiting? We'll be fine soon, no one else is fine either. Don't rush in the water. Be careful not to slip, Feizai cautioned. Yes, I know why the others haven't had a good reason either. Karen Mok was talkative and still enjoyed being immersed in the water. They're also looking for shoes. Last night when we retreated to the Students' Activity Center, I saw Qi Wei and a few others next door were barefoot. The sound of rushing water was heard, and Feiyu looked down. Xin Yu Hong walked out of the shoe and hat room with a pair of shoes in her hand. She smiled when she saw her. Feiyu, I just want to envy you again. Look at us, we are all wet again today. That's right, Karen Mok continued on the other end. Feiyu, before she finished speaking, Xin Yu Hong suddenly screamed and jumped in shock. With a splash, the shoes in her hand fell into the water, and she swayed with it, slipped and fell into the water. Feiyu was stunned. There was no time to think about it. She ran down the stairs and rushed into the water. Yu Hong, Karen Mok yelled, flinging her shoes to an unknown destination. Turning around, she heard 2 splashing sounds. She blurted out another and plowed through the water, her arms swishing towards her. The chaos was so intense that Feiyu didn't know where to look. Karen Mok rushed in with a massive splash, rippling half the hall. Xin Yu Hong, a hand's length away, fell underwater, her back disappearing with a thud. She ducked, holding her breath, and plunged into the water. She reached out, grabbed an arm, and pulled hard. Xin Yuhong choked with a shudder. Feiyu supported her, patting her back. Ah! Ouch! The voice in the center of the hall suddenly changed tone. They both turned to see Karen Mok's upper body and head tumble forward in the water, sinking to her forehead. Xin Yuhong was so frightened that she swallowed the sound of her choke. Feiyu's grip loosened, and she was about to rush over when she heard another splash. Xianqi stood up again, wiping her face. It's okay, the sofa back, Xianqi panted. Yuhong, are you okay? What happened just now? Something seemed to touch me. Xin Yuhong shivered and looked around. Xianqi, holding onto the sofa back in the water, nearly jumped up again. She was now standing in the middle of the living room, surrounded by water. It's okay, it could be a fish, or a branch. There's anything in the water. Feiyu paused, looking at the calming muddy water next to her. She said calmly, Anki, you don't have to come over here. Go back quickly. Yuhong, do you want another pair of shoes? When she said this, the two girls breathed a sigh of relief, their faces pale and they both laughed dryly. Feiyu pushed Xin Yuhong towards the stairs. The shoe closet was right next to them. Xin Yuhong looked over and Feiyu took 2 steps back, raised her hand, and helped her get a pair of shoes down. Looking back, Xianqi was also very brave. She rushed towards the stairs and didn't forget to pick up a pair of shoes when passing by the shoe closet. The 3 of them met peacefully on the 2nd floor. All of them were wet and shapeless. Yuhong, do you feel like you were pecked or rubbed? Feiyu asked. Xin Yuhong thought about it for a long time, but she couldn't explain it. The 3 of them stared at her calf with 6 eyes, but there was no trace of any marks. Shuangtan encircled the roof of Feiyu's neighbor on the west side of the river 3 times, and Wu Jia was also circling. On this vast expanse of water, many cars were circling around the house, adding a bit of busy atmosphere to this quiet and drizzling afternoon. The blue-black car that brought Fan Cheng was the most cheerful, going everywhere. Perhaps seeing that no cars were parked near Feiyu's place, it circled around and flew low over the bamboo forest. Yan Feiyu had been inside for a long time. Shuangtan estimated the time, staring at the 2 girls' 2nd-floor balcony, frowning slightly, and raised his hand to touch the communicator. The other party didn't pick up in time. Chapter 44, Continue to look for shoes. Shuangtan was about to dial again when a figure appeared on the balcony. He closed the video call request, looked closely, and was stunned. Miss Yan had obviously just come out of the water. Her hair was soaked and tangled in strands. The large flowing and soft shawl stuck to her body. The hem of her skirt was wrinkled and had several folds. What's wrong? What happened? Shuangtan hurriedly pulled the cart to the balcony and asked loudly. Feiyu was holding a chair in her hand and was very careful when walking. Because there was water on the balcony, there was water in her boots as well, which meant that both the inside and outside of her shoes had to be non-slip. It's okay. The 2 of them were taking their shoes and slipped in the water. They are cleaning them up. Ask your classmates to wait for a while, okay? Did you fall into the water too? Shuangtan asked, stretching out his hand. I went into the water to help. Feiyu looked up with an apologetic look in her eyes. I will get your car wet. Shuangtan was stunned for a moment, then said, it's okay, get up quickly. Feiyu stepped on the chair, and her boots made a strange squeak. When she stepped on the other foot, there was another long squeak. Shuangtan looked at Feiyu without showing any expression, and pulled her into the car. Feiyu's face did not move, but she knew in her heart that he heard it. Suddenly, she remembered that Shuangtan helped her to go into the water to retrieve the peachwood hairpin, and when he walked ashore, he made a squeak. Although she pretended not to hear it, she did feel a little surprised and amused, and she even thought that he had a strong psychological quality. Wu Jia, Zi and Xin will be out in a while. Shuangtan hurriedly gave instructions, then turned his head and asked Feiyu, I'll get your bag for you, you wipe it first. Do you want it? Yes. Shuangtan turned around and helped her get the bag again, not forgetting his concern. Apart from being soaked in water, are you all okay? No. Feiyu paused. Just now, Xianqi and Xin Yuhong were vying to invite her to wash up in their bathroom, but she refused. Because she had to go back to her own building to do something. Can you take me home? I'm afraid I also need to get a pair of shoes, she said, half tentatively and half requesting. Her voice was rarely gentle, and a little ethereal. After going back and forth like this, even a good person should be unhappy. My shoes are soaked, she explained. Shuangtan glanced at her and frowned. Do you have to go downstairs too? The water level is high downstairs. It's okay. I just tried it. My head is exposed and I can stand. Xiong Tian'an lowered his eyes slightly and noticed the hem of Feiyu's skirt. It was not very noticeable from a distance, but now that he was sitting close, it was obviously soaked. In just a short while, water kept dripping along the edge, and the color of the boot tips exposed under her skirt was darkened by the water. Thinking of the strange sound she made when she walked just now, she thought that even her entire feet were soaked in the water in the boots. He wanted to suggest that Feiyu go back to Dongsan district to clean her boots and make do for 2 days, but seeing that she was soaked all over, her pair of black and white eyes were waiting for his answer with a hesitant and pleading look. He couldn't help but change his words and said, "I'll get it for you." He paused and continued to suggest, "I'll park the car on the water and go in through the main gate. This would avoid the danger of the car hovering in the air without anyone at the controls." "No, I'll go. I'm already wet." Feiyu immediately rejected Xiong Tian'an's kindness. "Besides, you don't know which pair I want to take." Xiong Tian'an glanced at Feiyu after hearing this, suppressing the strange feeling that Miss Yan actually had specific requirements for shoes at this time. Maybe you can tell me where it is. The water is too deep. Didn't 2 female classmates fall just now? It's better for me to go," Xiong Tian'an advised sincerely. "No, you are not familiar with it. I will go by myself." Feiyu shook her head firmly. Xiong Tian'an frowned slightly. He didn't want to watch a girl wading in such deep water to get something, but Miss Yan insisted on not letting him help, and he really couldn't force her. "Then how about this? You go from the balcony, go downstairs and open the door. I'll get out of the car and watch you outside, so I can come and help you in time if anything happens. After you get the shoes, get in the car from the balcony upstairs." Feiyu was grateful. The corners of her lips curved slightly, and her voice softened involuntarily. "Thank you, you're welcome." Xiong Tian'an smiled. "Be careful." After watching Feiyu get out of the car and enter the house, he quickly landed the car on the water, and after a while the door opened. Looking around, the water inside and outside the building was level, very vast. Most of the original furnishings and furniture were submerged in water. The door to the backyard was closed, but Xiong Tian'an knew that there was water behind that door as well. There seemed to be some black straight strips of objects, swaying on the water, of varying lengths. He stared at them, carefully identified them, and confirmed that they were branches, thinking that they were the remains brought by the flood. Feiyu walked through the bedroom and down the stairs. The sound of water filled her footsteps. She slid along the small building until she reached the corner of the stairs. She saw Xiong Tian'an's car almost blocking the front door. He opened the car door, looked up and stared at the stairs intently. One foot was on the bottom edge of the car door, as if ready to jump into the water to help at any time. Feiyu pursed her lips slightly and smiled at him. Her smile was fleeting as usual. No mistake, 1 poem, 1 post, 1 content, 1 book, 1 forum. Her eyes swept across the water below, and she hesitated twice on the floating black strip, thinking that she should move faster. Xinyu Hong's slip just now had triggered the shadow left by the black water snake in her heart. However, there were people watching, so the shadow was not serious. "Student, go slowly, be careful," Xiong Tian'an reminded loudly. Feiyu went down step by step, and he frowned. The water was below her shoulders and had already covered her heart. Although she walked cautiously, the water still swayed back and forth. She had forgotten to take off the large shawl, which now spread out vaguely as the water rippled, floating on the surface. "Student," Xiong Tian'an couldn't help but shout, "you'd better take off your silk scarf to prevent it from getting snagged." Feiyu was stunned. Earlier, at her neighbor's house, she had been in a hurry to jump into the water and hadn't noticed. The shawl was now loose. Although there was nothing but water around her and no exposed furniture to get caught, Xiong Tian'an's words made a lot of sense. She nodded, untied the shawl around her neck, turned around and looked around, and it was a bit difficult to throw it back down the stairs. "Tie a knot and throw it over here, I'll catch it." Feiyu was in the room, not far from the door. She immediately followed Xiong Tian'an's method, rolled the shawl into a small ball, raised her hand and threw it towards him. Xiong Tian'an reached out and caught it easily. With a little force, he squeezed out some water and put it to the back row. The shoe and hat closet opened, and Feiyu looked up, her gaze gliding across the top shelf. Her mind quickly reviewed the outfits she'd sorted out today. There weren't any versatile shoes. Only 3 pairs were left, placed high up. The rest were buried, so she didn't really have much choice. Shuang Tian'an saw Feiyu standing there looking up, and he couldn't help but think to himself, Miss Yan is really picking out shoes. He'd previously thought it was a polite refusal to help him, and now he was speechless, waiting patiently. Chapter 45. A little effort. Fei Zai sighed softly at the pair of shoes she had chosen, feeling very sorry that all her shoes that had been soaked in water were ruined. After the water receded, she would have to spend time buying some new ones. The blue-black car passed over the front door and turned a corner at the crown of the willow tree. Shuang Tian'an's eyes flashed, and he saw that the car flew along the edge of the bamboo forest where it had originally landed. Soon, it turned again, rushed back diagonally, slowed down and landed on the water in front of Fei Zai's door, and drove towards the small building. The water ripples came in circles. The car drew another arc smoothly, turned its head, and came side by side with his car. The waves overlapped with the previous waves, easily passed under his car, and rushed into the house. Shuang Tian'an looked hurriedly and saw that the water in the whole house was rippling violently. Feiyu in the water was startled and turned her head. Although she grabbed the door of the shoe and hat room in time, a wave of water rushed up to her neck and hid her face hard. Hold on, he shouted, quickly opened the door on the other side, waved his hand and leaned forward to stop him. Stop, don't come over. The blue-black car was close to him, and in a moment it also opened the door and leaned out half of its body. What's going on here? Shuang Tian'an didn't bother to answer, and turned to look at Feiyu again. She was wiping her face with her palm, and then wiped the water off her mouth with her back hand. Her cold eyes stared at the door with resentment. The car next door, it's okay, hold on, he shouted. Circles of water slapped against the walls, and were rebounded by the walls. The water in the whole room surged and was particularly turbulent. Shuang Tian'an had no choice but to keep his eyes fixed on Feiyu. Several black strips of objects were pushed up on the waves and rushed towards her. Feiyu retreated reflexively. Its branches, Shuang Tian'an said, seeing that she was in even more pain than himself in the water. He couldn't help but urge, just grab a pair of shoes and go up. Feiyu saw clearly that they were indeed branches, and waved her hands to push them away. Fortunately, she was only panicked for a moment. She nodded to Shuang Tian'an, turned around and raised her arm to get the pair of boots she had liked for a long time. What's going on here? The person outside asked again, tilting his head and bending over to try to see into the house through the gap in Shuang Tian'an's car. Is that classmate Yan in there? What is she going to do? Feiyu paused. Who knows her? Student Yan, get a pair of shoes, Shuang Tian'an replied, looking at the person who came. The car just came over and brought up the water a little quickly. Sorry, I didn't think of this. I just saw your car floating sideways on the water. I remember you seemed to have left before. Why are you back again? Maybe something happened, so I rushed over to see you. Did I rush to Student Yan? The person who came explained for a while, and then raised his voice and shouted into the house. Sorry, Student Yan, I'm sorry. Are you okay? Shuang Tian'an looked into the house and saw Feiyu pulling the corner of her mouth, turning her face away, without saying a word. Student Yan is okay. He hid his amusement and asked the visitor casually, is your side almost done? Oh, almost done. Oh, Fan Cheng is slow. Oh, he has too many things to take, clothes, pants, shoes. The people in the car stopped listing, looked over Shuang Tian'an's car and looked inside. Student Yan is okay? It's uncomfortable to soak in the water. You'd better get in the car early. Without waiting for Shuang Tian'an to respond, he pursed his lips, stretched his neck and shouted louder into the house. Student Yan, I am a classmate of your next-door neighbor Fan Cheng. Also in Department B we had a large class together in the first grade. Feiyu stopped in the middle of the water with her shoes in hand. The waves in the house were slowly getting smaller. She looked out the door and saw that Shuang Tian'an, who had better social skills than her, had a confused look on his face, as if he couldn't understand the main point of what others said. She was even more puzzled. The visitor was greeting her through the door at this time, with a strange emotional intelligence. I also know several of you from Class 3A, Ji Mingda, Si Jun, Hu Geek. They all said that your grades are very good. Classmate Yan, I say, the water is muddy, it's not good to stay in it for a long time, just grab some and come up. After the man shouted, his eyes fell on Shuang Tian'an, and a sincere grin spread across his face, and he laughed to himself. Isn't that right? Shuang Tian'an couldn't help but laugh. Yes, please persuade me, the man whispered to Shuang Tian'an, waving his hands busily towards him. and tried to get acquainted again. You are from class 3 GUI, right? Shongtanan or Huoyi, you were all sitting together just now. You must be classmate Yan's partner, right? Fan Cheng said that his classmate Yan next door opened a simulated scene at the door of his house, and he also mentioned the name of the partner, so I got a little confused. Shongtanan is classmate Yan's partner. The visitor was delighted when he heard this. I'm He Fangyu. Soon, our two departments will also cooperate on a project. He waved his hands vigorously again and said in a low voice, please persuade, hurry up and go up. Why are you soaking in the water? It's so dirty. Shongtanan nodded to the enthusiastic student from Department B and turned to the house. The water surface was still. Feiyu stood in the middle of the water with her shoes in her hand, facing the door, frowning slightly. Go through the balcony, he said, don't wait over. There are door thresholds and furniture in my direction. Feiyu didn't care what the person in the car outside was muttering. Anyway, she didn't know him. She waited for Shongtanan to receive her gaze, stared at him and circled his face. Can you wait a moment? I'm afraid I still have to clean up. Today, she felt more and more relaxed towards Shongtanan, as if she was not worried about her debts. The room was full of water, but the waves were still and it soaked up to her shoulders. She raised her arm, holding a pair of shoes. The ends of her long hair stuck to her shoulders and collarbone. With a slight movement, the water ripples spread out in circles across her chest, centered on her. Her eyes were wide open, and she looked at him with embarrassment. This kind of pleading expression that ordinary girls often have on Miss Yan made Shongtanan feel a little amused. Okay, take your time. Feiyu climbed onto the banister of the stairs and glanced back. Shongtanan was still staring at her with a sharp gaze, and the car outside the door hadn't left. When the water reached her waist, she turned around and said, I'm closing the door. Shongtanan was slightly startled, opened his mouth, and then nodded. Okay. He turned to He Fangyu on the other side and said, Student Yan is fine. That's good, that's good. He Fangyu got back into the car. I'll go check on Fan Cheng. The water rippled, swaying gently around Feiyu. She closed the door with the remote control before standing on the stairs and walking upstairs quickly. She was wearing a skirt and must have looked disheveled after coming out of the water. Shongtanan was so considerate that he turned his back without saying anything, which made her quite satisfied. Feiyu took care of herself in the bathroom as quickly as possible, changing into clean clothes, shoes and socks. She finally got out of that cold and sticky state. She only had time to make her hair half dry, but she felt much more comfortable than before. She was quite considerate and was afraid that her clean clothes would get wet by the water stains on the seat, which would be rude and disrespectful, so she took a blanket with her when she left. Shongtanan's car had already been parked on the balcony. When he saw Feiyu coming out, she looked very fresh. Her light green suit was like a new leaf unfolding in the rain. After being pulled into the car by Shongtanan on a stool, Feiyu brushed the back of the chair with a blanket, folded it in half and used it as a cushion on the seat. Then she sat down gracefully, without any trace of her previous timidity and weakness. Shongtanan had actually wiped Feiyu's seat with his coat in the car. Seeing Feiyu's whole set of actions, he didn't mention it and smiled gently. Wu Jia said that classmate Z and classmate Zin are better, and Qi Wei and the others are also better. We can all go back soon. Feiyu looked out, across the bamboo forest, and saw the blue-black car parked on the second-floor balcony of the small building on the east side. It seemed that Fan Cheng had also packed up. Classmate Shong, I'm really sorry to bother you today. You're welcome, Shongtanan said hurriedly. Feiyu pondered for a moment, and said directly, if there is anything I can help with in the future, please feel free to ask. Shongtanan looked at Feiyu. She was serious, and as straightforward and concise as when she talked about the scene simulation project before. He chuckled and said, Classmate Yan, don't worry, it's just a small favor for me. Chapter 46 Scarf. Feiyu had been living in the temporary dormitories in the East Dormitory for 3 days and was completely unaccustomed. She complained about the overcrowding, with 30 people living on one floor, including the original residents. It was always crowded. Furthermore, with a recent disaster in the West Dormitory, students from the East Dormitory frequently visited to offer their condolences, a constant stream of visitors every day. Whenever Feiyu passed a common room, she could always see people gathered and chatting. The common room was near the elevator, open and enclosed by a waist-high wall, with numerous sofas and small tables for students to gather. Now that affected students were living on this floor, There was an endless supply of topics to discuss. Everyone felt a sense of solidarity, sharing the hardship. Even without friends visiting, the talkative students gathered to discuss the disaster, not to mention the presence of friends who showed up to show their support. The common room was always busy. Every time Feiyu took the elevator, she inevitably had to greet her neighbors and acquaintances in the common room. As she approached, someone would say, "Hi, classmate Yan," and she would at least smile in return. Neighbors never sit alone, there's always someone nearby. After greeting her once, the next time someone sees her, they'll greet her with, "Hello, classmate Yan." Hello. Feiyu wasn't a social person, and her temperament was aloof. Back in Zisu district, aside from the 2 girls next door and the 3 boys across the river, she barely spoke to the neighbors farther away. But over the past 3 days, she'd seen so many people constantly, smiling more often than she had in a month. No wonder her father had urged her to try living in a large, shared dormitory when she first started college, saying it would change her aloofness and give him a sweet, playful, and affectionate daughter. Unfortunately, she only lived there for 2 weeks before swiftly leaving. Ever since then, she's been determined to live in a single-family dorm, even those conjoined twin rooms she couldn't tolerate. This was truly her stubbornness, she wouldn't listen to her father. Classmate Yan, what a coincidence, someone emerged from the common room and greeted Feiyu with a smile. Feiyu's lips curled into a perfectly ladylike smile. "Hello," Yu Qianchen said, "I came to see my classmates. I didn't want to run into Yan. Do you live here too?" "Yes, I heard from my classmates that the West Dormitory is still being cleaned up." "Yes." After a few words, Feiyu figured the friendly pleasantries were over, so she decisively said, "I'll go back to my room first." "Bye." Yu Qianchen opened his mouth and called after her, "Yan, see you later." Feiyu felt helpless. She now greeted people over a dozen times a day, but thankfully, most people were quiet, except for Yu Qianchen. His words were largely meaningless. She came and went here, so naturally she lived here. It was obvious that the West Dormitory was being cleaned up, something everyone knew, but he actually had to mention it. Feiyu smiled as she walked down the hallway. When a carefree neighbor opened their door, she walked right past without even glancing. Only when she reached her room did she breathe a sigh of relief. Noisy and bustling, nothing more than that. This was why she couldn't live in a large, communal dormitory. The people she met were all different, and quiet was a luxury. Feiyu's temporary dorm seemed a bit shabby, with a small hallway and small rooms, and no courtyard to wander around. But that wasn't the main issue. She hadn't brought many of her usual belongings with her, leaving her unable to even read a paper book or brew a pot of floral tea. She could only lie in bed, lost in thought. However, the disaster victims on their floor were still considered lucky. They went back the afternoon of the second day after the disaster and managed to retrieve some of their belongings. Those who followed suit were stopped by the dorm management. The dorm management issued another notice, announcing that the West Dormitory would be completely cleaned up and closed until the cleanup was complete. During this time, affected students could pick up their daily necessities for free at the campus supermarket. Karen Mok and Xin Yuhong happily dragged Feiyu to see it, and each of them took home a set of their departmental work clothes. Due to the sudden downpour and flash floods, the academic buildings of all departments were affected. Classes and projects were suspended for the next few days, and everyone was helping their instructors clean up the teaching areas. The more work clothes they had, the better. However, once everyone returned to the dorms, there was nothing to do. Feiyu didn't often join in the conversations in the common lounge. Back in the dorm, she'd replay the stone-cutting scenes in her mind, mulling over her techniques in preparation for the upcoming stone pot project. That evening, she received a video call from Shang Tannen. "Student Yan, I'm sorry to bother you. I forgot a silk scarf in my car, and I just noticed it today. Do you think I should bring it up now, or should we schedule another time?" Feiyu was stunned for a second before remembering what had happened. "No need. I came to see you. I just need to return your blanket. Tell me where your room is," Feiyu said. Shang Tannen was startled, but quickly gave her his dorm number. Feiyu pulled a thin green blanket from the cupboard and went down to the 9th floor. "I owe Shang Tannen a lot of favors recently, so it's only right that she comes to return the favors." Shang Tannen was already waiting at the door. "Student Yan, please come in, it's a bit messy inside," he said politely. Upon hearing this, Feiyu stopped at the door of the living room, without glancing around, and handed over the blanket in her hand. "I have washed it, thank you," she added a little apologetically. "I have been helping to clean the Department A building these 2 days and didn't return it in time." It's okay, Shang Tian said hurriedly. "Student Yan, please sit down." Feiyu really sat down, which surprised Shang Tian secretly. He smiled and greeted, "We too. The fourth-year seniors are busy with their graduation projects, so we third-year students have to take the lead and work harder." "Yeah," Feiyu nodded. "Student Yan, would you like something to drink?" Shang Tian asked awkwardly. It was unexpected that Miss Yan came to his house, and he had no preparations for entertaining guests. "Only water, is that okay?" Feiyu shook her head. "No, thank you." Shang Tian smiled, turned around and picked up a ball of something. "Student Yan, this is your silk scarf. It fell in the corner and I'm afraid it's dirty." Feiyu's eyes fell on Shang Tian's palm. Her shawl was tied into a small ball, just like that day, and it was wrinkled. She didn't know where it fell in the car. Although it didn't look dirty, it had been soaked in the flood and had been curled up in the shade for so many days. "I wonder if it has molded." "Thank you." Feiyu took it without any disgust on her face. She placed her hands on her knees, holding the ball of silk scarf politely, and looked up and said, "All projects in our Jiazhen class have been affected by the heavy rain and floods and will be automatically postponed for 2 weeks. The same goes for our Gizm class." Shang Tian stood across from Feiyu. The standard configuration of the living room was only a table and a chair. There was a single sofa in the bedroom, but it was a bit late to drag it out now. Feiyu had been well educated as a lady since childhood. Seeing that her host was not sitting down, she stood up subconsciously. Shang Tian became increasingly embarrassed, but pretended not to know and continued gently, "Everyone can rest assured about the project. Classmate Yan, have you been accustomed to living in Dongsan district these days?" "Yes, if you need any help, please let me know." Normally, after hearing the host say this, the guest could almost say goodbye, but Feiyu still had one thing to ask. After a slight hesitation, she looked up at Shang Tian and asked, "Classmate Shang, you've helped me a lot recently, and I want to express my gratitude. When I can move back, can I treat you to a meal? You choose the time and the menu. I'm a decent cook. Or you can choose a restaurant if you prefer." This was the most sincere invitation Feiyu had given since her father's death. Of course, since her father's death, she had been alone, with simple affairs and social interactions, so she had never properly invited guests. Shang Tian was slightly stunned, and stared at Feiyu. Seeing her earnest expression and sincerity, he couldn't help but smile and said politely, "Student Yan, I didn't help you with anything, you don't have to take it to heart." Feiyu looked at Shang Tian and nodded after a while. "Then I'll take my leave." Shang Tian sent her to the corridor, and Feiyu asked him to stay. When she reached her floor, Feiyu walked out of the elevator and glanced at the garbage recycling machine standing beside her. She paused and stared at the ball in her hand with a frown. She sighed softly. This shawl has been used many times. Now in this state, even if she washed it, she would still feel uncomfortable. It is probably impossible to wear it around her neck again. She put the ball into the garbage recycling machine, brushed her hands, and walked forward. Behind her, another elevator opened. Shang Tian watched Feiyu's movements and did not step out of the elevator immediately. Passing the public restroom, Feiyu smiled and nodded to Qi Wei and others sitting inside, and went straight back to her room. "Qi Wei, what can I do for you?" Shang Tian then walked into the common restroom. "Nothing, classmate Salon, I need you." Feiyu was washing her hands in the dormitory, feeling distressed. Shang Tian seemed to have no interest in food. She owed him more and more favors, which was a bit difficult to deal with. Chapter 47 Trial Dance. The dormitory administration finally announced that restoration work on the West Dormitory buildings and surroundings was largely complete, allowing students to move back soon. Qi Wei and others discussed organizing a small farewell party to commemorate the unforgettable disaster experience and to thank the East Dormitory students for their enthusiastic support. Originally, they planned to invite a small circle of acquaintances, including neighbors on the same floor who had suffered through the hardship, and also welcomed friends and classmates who had helped their neighbors. Unexpectedly, many West Dormitory residents shared the same idea, planning a small get-together with friends before moving back. The event took many forms, from dinners to dances, and over a dozen groups applied to rent the students' activity center for the weekend. Somehow, it evolved into a collective masquerade. The students' union took charge of the planning and even secured a donation from the dormitory administration. The dances at the East Lynn Institute of Mechanical Engineering were always hilarious. Each male student interested in a dance partner initially had to go on stage and learn the steps from a dancing robot. This step was called the entrance trial dance. Those who couldn't keep up with the robot's rhythm weren't allowed to leave the dance floor, and the entire party was spent drinking and chatting. Of course, you can keep trying. Those who passed the trial dance must choose their first partner as a courtesy, and subsequent partners can be accepted or rejected as they please. Masked balls are even more amusing. While they're called masks, they're actually disguised, so it's hard to tell the difference between men and women. Perhaps a man, after painstakingly passing the trial dance, finds the celestial beauty he invites is actually his brother. When she dances with him, their steps are identical. No one knows how that makes the person feel, but the laughter of the onlookers is considered civilized. Countless people stumble and convulse, clutching their stomachs. This is called a dance that brings down a crowd. I can't help it. This is too ridiculous, Xin Yuhang laughed, her hair crown trembling. On the trial stage in the center of the dance floor, a giant humanoid squirrel was desperately dancing to the drumbeat. The tempo grew faster and faster, but the dancing robot remained unfazed, each leap graceful and precise. The poor squirrel was fine at first, but then his energy began to falter and he faltered. But he refused to give up, forcing himself to the end of the song. A group of people in the audience, presumably friends, cheered him on with deafening cheers. He gave his all, his enormous tail bouncing up and down in a dazzling display. Tannen, who from your GUI department did the trial dance this time? A man with a yellow beard ran over to Qi Wei's table, glanced around, and zeroed in on someone wearing a black mask. The man's face was obscured, revealing only his clear, gentle features. The plain black mask, devoid of any ornamentation, accentuated the corners of his lips. Everyone at the table smiled, but none of them uttered a word. The bearded man had a rugged appearance and was tall and thin. His upper body was covered in a large cage made of glittering golden fish scales, which made him look very strong. Underneath it was a pair of slender legs, which was quite funny. He continued to stare at the man in the black mask and commented, "Tannen, you are so uncreative. It doesn't matter whether you have it on or not." I recognized it at first sight. The masked Shrong Tannen smiled and said, "I applied for the robot, but the trial system was volunteered by several senior brothers. I didn't know it would be so interesting beforehand." As soon as he finished speaking, the dancing robot on the trial stage did a light front flip. The big squirrel next to it also jumped up, but it was too weak to jump. It rolled on the ground and fell to the ground. He clenched his fists and banged them twice in frustration. The big furry tail on his buttocks also shook twice, making everyone in the audience laugh. "Is this just fun?" the bearded man gasped with amusement, gesturing with a trembling finger toward the trial platform. "Those seniors in your GUI department are so inconsiderate of their juniors." In another corner, Karen Mock, dressed in a raincoat and boots, her face covered with a scarf, giggled uncontrollably. "What a pity for this guy. He's already on to the last move." Feiyu had a cold disposition and disliked crowds, but after all, she had been trained as a lady, and she would patiently and thoughtfully behave in ordinary social situations. Today, she wore a light gray dress with gold trimmings and a bird mask with flowery feathers, looking very proper. She and the two girls next door had become closer and more cordial than ever since the torrential rain and flash floods, and the three of them sat together after entering. At that moment, she watched the giant, human-shaped squirrel slouching down the stage, her lips curled up as she continued, "Luckily he went down, otherwise his partner would be in for a rough time, especially when they had to spin around." Xin Yuhang and Zianqi imagined the partner standing across from the giant squirrel, spinning around and swiping the remaining partner with a smack of their tail. They immediately felt their faces tremble with unease, and their laughter deepened. Feiyu sat upright, unmoved. "Another one's coming up." Qi Wei winked at Shrong Tannen and called out to the bearded man, "Ji Mingda, you guys in Division A are so talented, the robots all call you ancestors, and why aren't you coming up yet? You called my name." Ji Mingda scoffed. "Qi Wei, I knew you the moment you opened your mouth. You're clearly my partner, but you're just pretending. I've been suspicious for a long time. Do you think I'm stupid? I'm not the ancestor of the dancing robots." Qi Wei eagerly pulled a chair over. Sit, come watch with us." The table swarmed in response, and Ji Mingda didn't hold back. At the beginning of this school year, Students from Divisions A and G had been collaborating on projects. Those with average sociability, like Ji Mingde and Qi Wei, often moved back and forth between the studios in the two buildings to meet project demands. Partners helped classmates, classmates helped partners, and everyone in both divisions became almost familiar with each other. Ji Mingde happily agreed and prepared to make a seat. Unfortunately, his large upper body cage took up too much space, forcing everyone to squeeze in, nearly stacking their bodies like a slanted figure. Just looking at Ji Mingde's impressive horse and golden sword was so hilarious that everyone at the table was already laughing themselves to death, even without watching the trial dance on the stage. Ancestor, are you seated properly? Qi Wei said with a wry face. Yes, Ji Mingde touched the fish scales on his body, gently and carefully, and jokingly said, they're very precious. I asked another ancestor to make them for me. Which ancestor is so ingenious? It's not you, Qi Changgong quipped. Then you can't go up there. If you do, you'll fall and ruin your precious clothes. He had just made this casual remark when a newcomer to the trial dance stage tripped over their feet and fell to the ground. Even more pitiful, the mask on their head rolled all over the stage, and they had to scramble to pick it up. Everyone at the table burst into laughter. I can't bear to watch it, I can't bear to watch it. Feng Zhao covered his forehead and asked sideways, Tannen, you really didn't touch the trial system, right? Otherwise, you'd be hated to death. Absolutely not. Shang Tannen also smiled. Seeing that everyone at the table was staring, he denied it repeatedly. Several senior brothers from Gisi said that they were only concerned about protecting the materials for their graduation project during the rainstorm and didn't have time to take care of everyone. They wanted to help out with this event. They specifically asked for blank robots, and even the basic system is their own. The more I listen, the more scared I get. Ji Mingde held his bulging fish scale clothes. That's why I want to mix with you. I borrowed all this material from Department B with great difficulty. It was broken into pieces and it would take a long time to pick it up. Qi Changgong reached out and touched it curiously. Department B? That's real material, of course. How can there be fake in Department B? It's too real, Ji Mingde boasted. The inscription of Department B, look, those real life forms that are with me. Chapter 48 Corner. Everyone reached out their hands in amusement to experience the feel of the fish scales. This is the scale of a big fish produced in the Woolly Sea on the eastern edge of our country. You can touch it and see if it is smooth and flexible, Ji Mingde explained. When their second year in Department B went to Woolly Sea for an investigation class, the instructor assigned it to them. The first time I saw it, I had an idea to make a scale armor, majestic and awe-inspiring. Is this a scale armor? Wu Jia spoke frankly, looking at the cage on Ji Mingde's upper body with a look of suspicion. Does the armor look like this? This is one of the styles. Seeing everyone laughing, Ji Mingde tried his best to defend his creativity, raised his hand and pointed at the people at the table. You, don't laugh. My classmates in Department A, your project partners all said that this kind of fish scale can be made into armor. Shang Tannen's nose shrank, and Ji Mingde pointed at him at the end. Your project partner, Yan Feiyu, right? Have you been chiseling stone pots recently? I asked her to borrow the tools. She even personally drilled 3 pieces for me for trial. Shang Tannen nodded, looked at the fish scales on Ji Mingde's body, and thought to himself that Miss Yan was quite easygoing in the A3 area. After everyone looked at Ji Mingde's scale armor, they looked at the trial dance platform, and saw that there was a new person. Masters come one after another. Feng Zhao smiled slyly. This trial dance required cross-tapping, and the speed was getting faster and faster, but the people were still following well. Not long after, the speed of the dancing robot suddenly slowed down, and the rhythm was long. The person on the trial dance platform could not keep steady after the high-speed movement, and his calves trembled slightly. The dancing robot decomposed a tapping action into almost a dozen slow-motion shots, and each step was just a small angle change of the limbs. The person finally couldn't hold on and sat down on the floor. The master fell. Qi Changgong clapped his hands and laughed. Your senior brother is such a prank. Ji Mingde shook his head and sighed, unable to hold back for a moment. I don't believe that senior brother Guic is not going to let anyone go, otherwise the dance party can't be held. Qi Wei and Tannen, please tell us some inside information quickly. We can't keep going like this. Everyone falls down one by one. I really don't know. I'm the same as you. I just stepped in here before the dance party started. Ji Mingde glanced at Qi Wei and turned to pat the other side. Tannen, After all, we both work part-time in the student union, and you are in charge of the robots in the activity center. Senior brother Guic will never tease you, you must know the trick of the trial step. I'm not dancing. Shang Tanin shook his head slowly, holding back his laughter. I'm watching the place today. Ji Mingda, are you a spy sent by Division A? Fang Zhao suddenly realized. No, really not. Ji Mingda waved his hands repeatedly. Dancing is divided into this section and that section? I'm really fidgeting because of myself. Look at the space this armor takes up. Now there are so many people around me, I feel squeezed. Are you squeezing or are we squeezing? Everyone laughed and scolded. Look, you're fed up with it. Ji Mingda pretended to be annoyed. Although this outfit looks good on me, I feel restless wherever I go. The people from Section B didn't let me sit for long just now. He pointed forward. Across the huge dance floor, along the wall is a mixed rest area for the 5 departments A, B, C, D, and E, just like the large rest area of G, Zheng, Xin, Ren, and GUI here. It is full of masked people. At this moment, no one was dancing on the dance floor. Only people in various strange costumes kept going up to the trial stage to make jokes. Senior brother said that the first few sections are particularly difficult, and the later sections will be difficult and easy. It depends on your luck, Shang Tanin said with a smile. Ji Mingda let out a sigh. I was wondering, sitting across from you earlier and seeing how everyone in Group GUI was sitting so well. Okay, I'll wait for one of you to go up, then I'll follow suit and try. Don't tell anyone, or it won't be fun, Yi Xiaoguang instructed. Got it, gotta get it, someone has to try out the first few sections, right, Ji Mingda chuckled. After the 3 of them sat and watched for a while, it was unwise for them to stay in a small group and talk. Soon, Xin Yuhang and Zianqi left to chat with their classmates. Feiyu also recognized a few Group A students around and went over to say hello. Their original seats with excellent views were taken by others, so she found a new, secluded corner. It wasn't really secluded, really. There's no such thing as a truly secluded place in a crowd. It was just closer to the wall and out to the periphery. 2 people had just left at a small table, leaving only one person. Excuse me, may I sit here? She asked. The man raised his head, and under the bronze mask, a pair of eyes moved around Feiyu's face twice. He stretched out his hand to the seat next to him and said in a low and vague voice, please, thank you. Feiyu nodded politely, the corners of her mouth slightly curved under the flower-feathered bird mask, and sat down on the other side of the table. She glanced at the performance on the trial dance stage from time to time, feeling quite relaxed, and began to think about the things she needed to do after moving back to the West Dormitory District. Wow, suddenly, many people in the hall cheered. Feiyu withdrew her thoughts and glanced at the trial dance stage. A boy in a long robe bowed like a gentleman, winning applause from the audience. He passed the trial dance. Suddenly, this person became the focus of everyone's attention. Hush, hush, the trial step king has appeared, the trial step king has appeared. The dancing robots grabbed the robed man's hand, raised it high, and excitedly circled the stage, shouting, Glorious Guard, come. 6 identical dancing robots tumbled gracefully onto the stage, surrounding the newly crowned trial step king, triggering another round of cheers from the audience. The trial step king is choosing a partner. My goodness. He's already circled the entire venue. How much longer is he going to take? I heard the people at the nearby table chattering. Their tables were close together, making their voices clear. Conversely, another occupant at the same table was remarkably quiet, not even a sound during the roar of cheers. I found this place quite comfortable. The bronze-masked figure rested his hand on his knee, his index finger slowly stroking his thumb. His eyelids half-lidded, occasionally glancing at Feiyu from the corner of his eye. The mask of the flower-feathered bird had a raised tip at the nose. Its snow-white color contrasted beautifully with the skin, but it looked a bit sharp, perhaps due to the bird's beak. This is a good opportunity, he thought. A perfect song, a perfect content, a perfect book, a perfect forum. He twisted his neck to the side and opened his mouth. Yet, the whole crowd applauded. The robed man who had chosen to dance with the king of trials was a cloaked witch. A 6 robot honor guards suddenly stamped their feet, a deafening clatter, then bowed and stepped backward to welcome the witch onto the dance floor. Feiyu responded with a gentle clap of her hands, watching the first couple leave. The bronze-masked man paused, then raised his hands and applauded. The music began, and the robed man and the cloaked witch joined hands. Their poses were truly eerie, yet they performed an extremely joyful hip-twisting dance, their bodies twitching like two demons dancing wildly. Amidst laughter, the true prelude to the dance began. The dance ended, and the trial steps continued. The Donglan dance's rules dictated that the first 5 who dared to succeed in the trial steps be crowned kings, each accompanied by an honor guard. The 5 couples led the dance, receiving the audience's undivided attention. The second trial step king appears, the second trial step king appears, the robad on the stage shouted, glorious honor guard, come quickly, I'm ready to go up. Ji Mingda was eager to try. If I, with my scale armor, can't be crowned king, I'll be sorry for the craftsmanship and the material. Don't you see how many people are queuing under the trial step stage? If it's your turn, there will be no throne, Qi Wei said. Not everyone in the queue can pass. Ji Mingda stood up. Tannen, is the difficulty of the trial step dance now at a stage where it's sometimes difficult and sometimes easy? Yes, Shang Tannen smiled. Good luck. Move faster, there are too many people queuing up, Qi Wei urged. Shang Tannen took the opportunity to look at the trial step stage, exclaimed, and smiled, someone from Department C is on stage. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49 Dance Floor. The new dancer followed the rhythm well. Luckily, the physical movements in this dance weren't particularly difficult. There were no jokes, so Feiyu sat there bored, thinking she'd stay a little longer, leaving once the dance was halfway through and go back to sleep. Oh, classmate Yan, Feiyu was slightly startled, tilting her head to look at the person sitting next to her. The bronze-masked figure's exposed eyes stared straight at her, and he leaned over slightly, asking again, classmate Yan. Feiyu, yes. Which one are you? The bronze-masked figure seemed to give a brief laugh. Fan Chang, your neighbor. This situation was a bit funny, the neighbor had been sitting there for so long and still didn't recognize him. So it's classmate Fan. Hello, Feiyu nodded. Hello, classmate Yan. I saw you go out with 2 other female classmates earlier. When you walked over just now, I thought it was you, but I wasn't sure. Fan Cheng spoke, seeming quite pleased. What a coincidence, Feiyu replied. The bronze mask was dreary, its features flattened and its lips closed, painted black with a wide mouth. It looked menacing. Now, he was chatting to her, his real voice muffled by the mask, a dull hum. Feiyu did recognize Fan Cheng, but the conversation felt faint and incongruous, both visually and orally. Student Yan, the dorm office sent out a notice. Did you receive it, the notice about moving back? I received it, then you? As she spoke, a loud shout came from the trial platform. The third trial king has been announced. The third trial king has been announced. She turned to look towards the trial platform. Fan Chang's eyes flickered in the bronze bell's frame. He paused and turned to look at the trial platform. A man in a formal attire, wearing a half mask, was surrounded by a handsome honor guard, singing and dancing. The 2 previous trial kings had stopped dancing, and he crossed the empty dance floor, heading straight for the rest area near A, B, C, D, and E. He parted the crowd again and headed towards Feiyu's corner. Feiyu didn't pay much attention at first. There were quite a few people sitting in her corner, and anyone could be his dance partner. Since this person who had passed the trial dance was walking towards her and appeared in her sight, she stared at him nonchalantly, even thinking it was a good thing to watch the fun instead of chatting with a half-acquaintance. When the man in the formal suit, the trial dance king, was only 3 or 4 steps away from her, and even Fan Chang, who was on the other side of the table, tilted his head to look at her under his bronze mask, she realized something was amiss. Although puzzled, she remained calm. Miss, may I have the honor of dancing with you? The man in the formal suit said, stopping in front of her and smiling. Feiyu immediately knew it was Yu Qianjun from class C3. She had met him countless times during her 2 weeks living in the temporary dormitory. Every time, he would say more than the others, and his words were vague and focused. Whether he said something or not made no difference, but he always rambled on. After meeting each other frequently, Feiyu had memorized Yu Qianjun's voice. Thank you, she stood up and put her hand in Yu Qianjun's palm. Classmate, please make way, Thank you, make way, classmate, I'm sorry. The robot in charge of the honor guard bowed deeply and spoke to the people nearby in a low voice. Everyone then looked at the new dance couple and moved their positions to make a passage for 2 people. Fan Cheng half stood up and hurriedly dragged the table a little to make it easier for Yu Qianzhen to turn around and stand side by side with Feiyu. Please, Yu Qianzhen gently pinched her fingertips. The whole audience applauded. Feiyu heard a ouch from the side and back. The noise was mixed and nearby and was more noticeable than the applause. She guessed that Fan Cheng had either dragged the stool against the wall or hit the wall with his heel. Perhaps to compensate, the ouch was quickly swallowed up before a burst of resounding applause erupted from the side and behind, so forceful it seemed out of sync with the crowd's clapping. She couldn't help but glance sideways, peering over Yu Qianzhen's head to see what the neighbor, hunched over and hurriedly moving stools and chairs, was up to. The bronze-masked figure crouched behind them, cramped by the limited space between the tables and chairs, their presence dimming the light. Feiyu glanced at him, revealing only a strange figure cloaked in black, its head tilted back. 2 glints glimpsed from its copper bell-sized eye sockets, the only visible trace of its features. Cross-dressing reveals a person's deeper interests. Her classmates' pre-prom discussions flashed through her mind, and she thought to herself, this neighbor, Fen, has a rather dark side. Feiyu turned her gaze and caught Yu Qianzhen grinning at her. Like all masks, the thin mask pressed against his skin inevitably highlighted his eyes, which now shone with a gleaming smile. Anyone wearing a mask has a slightly distorted expression, she assessed. And she felt that the hand holding her seemed to start shaking a little. Shaker syndrome? Feiyu turned and looked forward. The crowd split on both sides, leaving a wide passage. The robots all bent their waists and waited, leading to the wide dance floor. Feiyu put some strength into her arms to prevent herself from losing the support. Respecting your dance partner is a must. Hey, this pair looks more normal, Yi Xiaoguang commented. No mistake. Yu Qianzhen didn't dress up much, and Feiyu, whom he invited, didn't dress up much either. Apart from the masks on their faces, the 2 of them were dressed like a formal ball, with dresses and evening gowns. Compared to the crowd of weird outfits around them, they looked like a breath of fresh air as they walked towards the dance floor. Shuang Tianan smiled and cast his gaze towards the dance floor. The robot honor guard was backing up, respectfully welcoming Yu Qianzhen and his dance partner to the center. The music started, and this one was soothing. Shuang Tianan couldn't help but feel lucky for his old acquaintance. Yu Qianzhen was really lucky. If it was a cramped dance, it would be extremely troublesome. Now, there were only 3 trial step kings and their dance partners on the dance floor, hugging each other and stepping slowly. Shuang Tianan watched and secretly praised. He and Yu Qianzhen talked mostly about robots and mechanical pets in the yard and the equipment room, but he didn't know Yu Qianzhen was such a skilled dancer. When the whole audience was paying attention, Shuang Tianan always paid more attention to acquaintances. After a while, he showed surprise. Yu Qianzhen put his hands on the girl's waist, was a head taller than the girl, and bowed his head slightly. The girl seemed to be a real girl, not a male classmate playing a role for fun. She danced gracefully and with a dignified posture. Because her back was facing away at first, one could only see the 2 golden ribbons of the mask in her long hair. They swayed gently with her dance steps, matching the faint golden threads between the folds of her low-key and elegant dress. The 2 exchanged dance steps, and Shuang Tianan saw the girl's profile. The mask on her face covered her nose. At this moment, the corners of her lips were slightly pursed, as if she was answering Yu Qianzhen. The curve of her jaw was soft, and from a distance she looked very gentle. Shuang Tianan's eyes moved to her wrist, and he saw a string of dark green beads. He couldn't help but marvel at how Miss Yan could dance so gracefully. He almost thought he had recognized the wrong person. The dance ended. Chapter 50 Theory of Fine Sand. Feiyu held up the hem of her skirt and bowed to the audience together with a long-robed witch and others. The cheerful trial music started again. We still have to wait for the 2 trial kings to come out, Yu Qianzhen whispered. To be honest, his voice was good, especially when he lowered his voice and talked slowly during the dance just now, which gave him a strong sense of being slightly drunk. Okay, Feiyu moved her lips lightly, and her tone was very capable. I wonder what the next dance is. The voice next to her head seemed to never stop. At a volume that no one in the audience could hear but she could hear, it circled around her ceiling, then descended along her forehead, as if sitting on the tip of her nose, forcing her to look closely and respond. I can dance them all." She raised her nose and stared intently at the trial platform. "Really?" The voice beside him laughed, whispering a tone that wasn't loud, yet clearly exaggerated. "That's great." Of course it was great. The rules of the Donglan Ball allowed everyone to dance freely, and they wouldn't punish anyone if they couldn't. It might make for some fun, but others had already provided so many jokes, so if it didn't work out, there was nothing wrong with letting them have some fun. A short silence passed, and before Feiyu had even taken a moment to admire the dance floor, the whispered voice crept up from his forehead, circling the ceiling again. "Oh. I don't dance much, if you don't count my body training classes, then I'm almost." He seemed to laugh again, a little modestly. "If the next 2 dances hadn't been in my body training classes, I might not be able to dance well. If I make a fool of myself, please forgive me." The newcomer on the dance floor was slowly bending down, almost to the point of being out of reach. "No," she said calmly. "Oh, I can't say for sure, then feel free to do as you please. I can help and cover it up for you." "Oh, thank you, thank you." The breath beside her head seemed to have been pinched, and the thank you came out hurriedly and chaotically. After a moment, her breath cleared and she chuckled, "I'll try my best to dance well and complete my task as the trial king." Perhaps he thought this was a good self-deprecating remark, and she was still laughing after she said it. Feiyu thought that human perception of language is subtle and completely individual. She didn't find his words to be so uncontrollable and laughable at all. She could tell that Yu Qianzhen had taken physical training classes and was doing well. She was also very sure that the situation he described would hardly happen. As for his dancing skills in the previous song, there was a slight tremor in his fingertips at first, but after a few steps, it disappeared. He danced very well, and it was obvious that he had put in a lot of hard training. There are always some people who are quite capable, but they always like to deliberately say that they are not good enough, and the way they say it seems to be a subtle hint that they can do it. The dancing robot on the trial step stage bent down perfectly, put its face on the ground, paused for 3 seconds, and then kissed the ground 3 times with dong dong dong. The trial stepper's body, which was bent in the opposite direction, softened, rolled over, and sat on the ground innocently, with a sad look that made the whole audience laugh. Feiyu's mouth curled up. This is a joke that makes people laugh uncontrollably. After this one, the 4th trial step king passed smoothly. Drag steps, pauses, spins. The dance music started again, and there were 4 pairs of dancers on the stage, all coordinating with each other exquisitely. Shuang Tanan praised again that the combination of Yu Qianzhen and Miss Yan was the most pleasing to the eye among the weirdos. Senior brother Guic probably wanted to quickly get rid of the trial step kings so that everyone could enjoy it together. Soon, a new trial stepper came up and passed the test with a surprisingly simple test. He smiled as the 5 pairs of trial step kings danced the most cheerful and boisterous invitation dance, swaying around the team below the trial stage. The whole audience began to urge them on excitedly. He informed his classmates, quietly stood up, and left his seat to check the facilities for the next game. "Miss, may I have the honor of dancing with you again for the next song?" Yu Qianzhen stopped in the middle of the dance floor. The passionate and unrestrained music suddenly stopped. He panted slightly, trying to hold back his chest, staring at Feiyu with shining eyes, and asked as gracefully and calmly as possible. "I'm sorry, I'm a little tired. In that case, miss, please allow me to take you back to your seat." Feiyu walked to the lounge area and stood casually. Yu Qianzhen didn't rush to walk away, but asked in a gentlemanly manner, "Miss, how can I help you? May I get you a drink?" "Thank you, I don't need it right now." Feiyu shook her head and said politely, "Sir, please make yourself at your leisure. I'll wait for my classmates here." Yu Qianzhen smiled and bowed. "Miss, thank you for dancing with me." Feiyu waited until he was gone before letting out a subtle sigh of relief. Those 3 dances were exhausting. Throughout, Yu Qianzhen adhered to the rules of the masquerade, pretending not to recognize her. She, in turn, feigned unfamiliarity, which also tired her to answer. Unrelated sentence fragment, no mistakes, 1 song, 1 post, 1 content, 1/6, 1 book, 1 forum, take a look. Feiyu was certainly puzzled that Yu Qianzhen would ask her to dance after passing the trial steps, but she had never been interested in trying to understand the psychology of others, especially those who were only slightly more familiar than strangers. Her father had a wide range of interests and, for a while, was obsessed with studying the theory of fate. When no one was home, He'd grab her and listen. He had a lot of insights, like the idea that a person will meet many people in their lifetime, but most are like sand, slipping through your fingers, leaving no need for scrutiny, and no opportunity for close scrutiny. But some, clinging to the sebum on your hands, don't slip through, naturally offering you the opportunity to observe them. Of course, his father said this when she was a teenager. The girl next door, with whom she had been getting along well, suddenly moved away, leaving her devastated. As an only child, she was devastated by the sudden loss of a playmate, leaving her depressed for a long time. Her father comforted her with the theory of fine sand, suggesting that the curly-haired, dainty girl had slipped through his fingers, a shallow bond, and there was no need to feel bad, as other friends would find their way through her fingers. Back then, she was naive, constantly suspecting the girl next door moved away because her hands weren't producing enough sebum. For this reason, and to avoid being friendless in the future, she secretly didn't wash her hands, persisting for days. As she grew older, she understood that her father's words were essentially about letting things take their course. Feiyu was aloof and genuinely indifferent to outsiders. As long as they didn't have a personal connection, no matter what they looked like or what they said, it was enough to just meet them and talk about them. It wasn't easy for them to gain any importance in her mind. As for those people, if they occasionally showed up in her presence, it meant they still had a connection to her. If that was fate, she would respond appropriately, depending on their status, relationship, and the occasion. If they ever stopped appearing, they would have slipped through her fingers. She didn't force it. Ultimately, fate was a journey of leisurely, flowing water, and drifting away. But her father refused to accept it. He saw his daughter growing colder as she grew older. Feiyu's personality was, to put it mildly, carefree and free-spirited, to put it bluntly, indifferent and desireless. Her father was anxious. He couldn't just coax his daughter out of her, so he sat across from her and gave her earnest advice. He introduced the fist theory, which states that one shouldn't keep their hands open all the time in life. They should always clench their fists, grasping the precious grains of sand they cherish, lest a single mistake slip through their fingers and make them difficult to retrieve. Holding on tightly, they would remain in her life, giving her precious experiences of joy, anger, sorrow, and happiness. Eventually, some of these grains of sand would accompany her throughout her life, bringing her fulfillment. This is the struggle and cultivation of fate. Unfortunately, Feiyu had yet to find the grains of sand she absolutely had to grasp, so she still considered others as passing experiences, never taking them personally. She was constantly thinking about repaying Shang Tenen's favor. Honestly, she didn't want to owe anyone anything. Once she'd paid it off, she wouldn't have to worry about it. It was annoying to constantly hold on to favors. Qi Changgong had gone to great lengths, using the trial stage and the rules of the ball to extend his hand and invite her to 3 dances, which she couldn't refuse. Feiyu hadn't considered the meaning beyond dancing. For her, it was just a matter of following the rules, and that was it. Her thoughts had already turned to the sample stones in the backyard. She was a little worried. She'd stopped working on the stone pot project for the past 2 weeks, but would resume work after moving back home. She was afraid her arm strength would regress. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.